Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are here once again on a Monday, April 14th. We only got about 2 weeks left of April, and then we are into the 5th month of the year, May. But it's a happy Monday morning right now. Should be relatively happy for most people, because if you looked at your portfolio, or if you looked at the equity markets in general, we're green. We are pretty damn green currently right now. Good morning to everybody. We got a lot of news updates to cover. We are continuing the green momentum from yesterday. We're going to talk about why we're green and why today, based on what it looks like in the pre-markets, hopefully we can sustain this green. Now, could it all go away off one tweet, off one headline? Of course. But as of now, it's pretty nice to see. S&P 500 up 1.5% in the pre-markets. That is higher than what it was last night in the futures. ARM's up 4%. All the semis are pumping because NVIDIA is pumping about 3.5% right here, which is very nice. The Qs, technology, making a little bit of comeback. This thing was basically at $400 last week on Wednesday. Now it's at $463 in the pre-markets, up about 2%. Oracle's up 2%. PayPal's up 2%. Bitcoin up almost 1%, 85,000.1. Apple, big winner of the day, big winner of last night. That was up about 7% as well. So continuing a lot of that momentum from what we saw yesterday in the overnight trading session. And then you've got a lot of other names that are just getting more momentum. I mean, Robinhood's trying to find its way back to that $50 support that it did have for about a week until the tariff volatility came through. Robinhood right here, 45.24. That's up 3.5% in the pre-markets. Again, NVIDIA right here up about 3.4%. Walmart's up. AMD's up 4%. HIMS is up. And our first story of the day that we'll get started with in just a second, Palantir is pumping 6.4%. It's been a long time since we've been able to start our market open with a story on Palantir, the company that really started all of this. And that's really because Palantir has been deliberative, not like doing a ton of press releases and like putting a bunch of PR, because I think at this point they're maturing as a company. They don't need to constantly show you how much they're doing. But that means that the few press releases we get from them likely means it's a pretty big freaking deal. And if you can tell by the title in the show, it's a pretty big freaking deal for Palantir. So we will start talking about that as our first story as we get into the show today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Lee, Luna, Uzi, Dragos, what's up? Jem, Walt, Samir, Amit, will you be rolling NVIDIA again? Yeah, probably. I have 47s on Hood this week and 119s on NVIDIA. So the thing is, though, like, again, any headline could come throughout the week and like it could stop the momentum that we're seeing right now. So I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a couple days and see if it gets really aggressive today. I'll roll it. My plan to roll it again is I don't really care about the covered call premium. I care about keeping the shares. So if I have to roll it out a month to like a much higher strike, then I'm totally fine with doing that. But I did get to collect in the midst of it about $1,000, not 1,000, like $600-700 of premium. So that's okay for me in the meantime. Zocold, what's up? Walt, what's up? Matt, Troy, Alex, Vincent, June, William, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Any data this week? Yeah, we got a lot of data coming in this week. Not CPI and PPI, but we have a ton of other macro things that we have to look at. Job numbers is going to be really important. Export, import numbers. I think we get a couple of pieces of important data today that I'll take a look at. But in general, there's going to be a ton of different macro piece of data. We do have some auction sales today, 3-bill and 3-month and 6-month auctions. Also the Fed, Barkin speaking. Jay Powell is speaking on Wednesday. I don't know where he's speaking, at some conference he's speaking. So we'll get his thoughts on terms of what's going on with the market and what he thinks about tariffs as well. Yeah, Webull is also pumping in the pre-markets. I mean, we didn't even know this thing went public. I didn't know it went public on Friday. This thing is up 109%. I mean, it obviously looks very memey. I'm not touching this thing. $6 billion market cap. Haven't looked at their financials. I don't think Webull's a bad company or anything. It's just, it's pumping at a pretty ridiculous level. And it's probably because there's some meme stock nature associated to it. So I'll try to get a look of the financials in a bit, but I think a lot of people are just excited about it. Also, the ticker symbol is BULL. So, I mean, when you have a ticker symbol called BULL, you're probably going to get people that are pretty damn excited about the stock in and of itself. Yes, some Fed presidents are speaking today, but there's going to be more speaking throughout the week, and Jay Powell will be speaking on Wednesday as well. Also, I think we had some earnings this week. Let me confirm. TSM and Netflix is on Thursday. Yeah, people were saying TSM is today. It's not today. We have the banks tomorrow, United Airlines tomorrow, IBKR, Bank of America, Citi. We had Goldman Sachs this morning that we'll talk about in a second. They had a pretty good earnings. They also initiated a $40 billion buyback program. So they're basically saying, hey, if you want to sell off our stock, we're going to buy it back. American Express, United Healthcare, Charles Schwab, Ally Bank, Truist, Blackstone, Netflix, and TSMC are on Thursday. So we got a big week for earnings as well that we're going to be going into. And that'll set us up for actual tech earnings that starts in about a week. And that's where we get Tesla and all those guys. But that starts next week. So Tesla's not this week. It'll be starting next week as well. Good morning from Puerto Rico. Good morning. I love it. We got some Germany, some Denmarks in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We are not drinking Saratoga water today. We are not stopping the momentum because we're green. We're greeny green. And I'm going to talk about, after we get through Palantir, why we are so green and why we could sustain this green from a macro perspective, and also how this green could go away very easily. But given the nature of the pump, it is a continuation from Friday. Remember, Friday, we reversed 2% in the middle of the day after the White House gave some clarity on the trade deals that they have on the table, and that Bessent was keeping an eye on the bond market. And it was the best week for the S&P 500 since November 2023, up 5.7%. By the way, one of the reasons I'm actually really excited in the market currently right now is not because the stocks that we all love are going up. It's because the yields that we all can't afford to go higher are going down. The 10-year right here down in the pre-markets, as it should be coming down as we're getting new clarity about the tariffs, and then the 30-year coming down as well. That's good for TLT. I entered that trade last week. But also, like, again, we just can't have yields go higher. Like, we're not in a position where we can afford to have yields go higher. So this is really the 30-year and the 10-year. I think these are the two charts everyone has to have pulled up on their laptop or your phone, for the rest of the year. These are going to be the two things that determine pretty much everything Trump does, in my opinion. And it's nice to see that these are starting to at least fall a little bit as we maybe get more clarity around what's going on with tariffs. All right, cool. Good morning. Let's get into it. Let's start off with Palantir. Again, it's been a while since we had a Palantir headline story. And, the reason for that, again, is Palantir has just not been showing off that many deals and stuff because they just don't need to. When you get to be this mature of a company, you don't need to constantly have a press release every other day like they did in 2022 when they were trying to prove, hey, no, like we're an actual real company. But the deals that you do get become very special. So this is a deal that is official. It is not speculation. It is real. And I'm going to be pulling up a link and read from some of the things that we got today. But Palantir and NATO. Palantir and NATO. NATO has officially signed a deal with Palantir. It is an AI-enabled warfighting system to provide a common data-enabled warfighting capability to the overall alliance. And it only took them 6 months, which honestly feels like 6 minutes given how long government procurement takes to actually get this software and implement it into their system. My takeaway from this is that the geopolitical turbulence of the world necessitates a solution that actually enables software to meaningfully work at the highest of levels. Obviously, we're seeing geopolitically across the world the amount of turbulence that's going on. Palantir is the modern day operating system that can deliver transformative software. The day Palantir started working with Ukraine, I think all of us knew, okay, wait a second, like NATO's probably realizing that if Russia can do what they did to Ukraine, then they are not necessarily safe, especially the states, especially the countries located in the Baltic states. And even 2 years ago, I remember Palantir weekly conversations where we were like, NATO is going to be working with Palantir in a profound way. They have worked with them to an extent, but not in the way that we are seeing today in this press release. And so this has been a deal that's quite frankly been 3 years in the making. And it's happening. And that is why Palantir, for those that are looking at the stock right now, is up 7%. NATO acquires AI-enabled war fighting system from Palantir. NCIA is pleased to team up with the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, or SHAPE, and Palantir to deliver MSS NATO to the warfighter, providing customized state-of-the-art AI capabilities to the alliance and enabling our forces with the tools required on the modern battlefield to operate effectively and decisively. The MSS NATO capability empowers commanders and warfighters to leverage cutting-edge AI and securely in core military operations by providing a common data-enabled warfighting capability to the alliance through a wide range of AI applications from LLMs to generative and machine learning. MSS NATO enhances intelligence infusion, targeting, battle space awareness, and planning and accelerated decision-making. All of the things we've heard from the past 3 years of different companies and clients using Palantir software is essentially the same language that NATO is using here today. Spokesperson from Palantir says, we're proud to support NATO's drive to bolster deterrence by deploying an AI-enabled warfighting platform at SHAPE. This platform underlines the alliance's determination to lead fearlessly with technological innovation. Through MSS, NATO shaped plans to accelerate the adoption of other novel capabilities being deployed across the alliance, including new emerging AI models and modeling and simulation, demonstrating a strong and abiding partnership between the North American and European technology base. There you go. NATO acquires AI-enabled warfighting system from Palantir. This is really cool. It's really cool to finally see this happening. A, because this is also international growth that Palantir has been lacking in when it comes to the not only commercial but government sector. And B, because if you've got NATO using Palantir, and not just using like one module of Palantir, this is an entire operating system for warfighting that is going to be highly complex, but also highly diverse in terms of the different use cases that is there. Yeah, it's a massive deal. This is why the stock is up 7% right now. We'll see if it can hold into the market open. But like, I think the street's just looking at this right now and saying, oh, so Palantir's not messing around, right? And, you know, obviously the rumors over the past couple of weeks have been Palantir and Doge, Palantir and this, Palantir and that. And there's been all these arguments about different ways that Palantir is going to start becoming more incorporated into the Trump administration, which seems to have a necessity to try to incorporate software in some meaningful way to modernize the tech stack. Well, NATO also, you would theoretically believe, wants to modernize their tech stack, especially given all the geopolitical turbulence. And it was inevitable that they needed some type of software. By the way, you know what else is inevitable? Germany, France, the rest of Europe, all these countries that have said, hey, we're going to build it on our own. It's not going to work. It's just not going to, like at the end of the day, when it doesn't work, and they're going to come back to Palantir. Now, maybe that's going to take a year. Maybe that'll take 2 years. Maybe that takes a month. But I do think the development of this software and the partnership with NATO should accelerate the ability for other European countries that have been anti-Palantir to take a look at why they're working with NATO and say, why are we so anti-Palantir? Like, what's the reason for it, right? Especially if the software works and NATO, the thing that a lot of these European allies that are part of, but that still don't like Palantir, if they're using Palantir, why are we not using Palantir? Like, to me, this is pretty obvious. And as a result of that, as Drago says right here, patience is a virtue. Inevitably, the international growth is going to be pretty expansive. I've been pretty public about my thoughts around Q1 earnings. I think they're going to crush it. I really do think they're going to build a phenomenal, or they're going to have a phenomenal earnings. I think we're going to get more than 30%. I think they're going to guide for more than 30%. Last quarter, we had 36%. I don't know if we get 36%, but it would not surprise me if we get 36 to 40% this quarter. Now, I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting like 32 to 33, maybe on the high end, 34, 35. But I just think the momentum has been strong. And I think that their software is more in demand than ever. And I think, you know, and here's the other thing why I think Q1 is going to be good. Like, we've kept our premium. Again, as the market fell, Palantir fell back to 65, but it's not like Palantir independently fell while the market was going up. Now, maybe that happens if we have a bad earnings, but as of now, we just haven't seen evidence that the market is willing to get rid of Palantir's premium, the same premium that everyone has been saying is just overvalued. It can't sustain itself, yada, yada. It's like, I agree, it's expensive, but there are other qualitative elements to why people care and why they're giving them this premium. Now, there was an article by Wired magazine around the IRS and Doge and how they're using Palantir. That's not really confirmed, in my opinion, which is why I haven't seen it as like truth yet. So it's not like an official release, right? So Wired right here, they put out a headline saying Palantir is helping Doge with a massive IRS data project. We just don't know if that's true, right? And Wired is more of a business media thing. It's not like it's not like a Wall Street Journal coming out and like putting this out. So this is a nice headline to see. And I believe there is definitely some synergies here. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is confirmed, but the NATO stuff is legitimately confirmed and that is out today. But I don't think it would surprise anyone to say that Palantir is helping Doge with a massive IRS data project, because we got a carp smirk a month ago when the interviewer was saying, hey, some people are saying Doge is going to be bad for Palantir, and he smirked. And I think there's a reason he smirked. I think he knows that Doge is going to be much better for Palantir than what people think. So excited to see all this momentum. Again, I know we haven't had a ton of Palantir news over the past couple of weeks, really past couple months, but I think that's just because they've been executing and they're on a different level at this point. And so the news that we do get is going to be relatively big, which is what we got today from Palantir. We do have some Grab news as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Grab made a big acquisition today, not the go-to acquisition, but an acquisition that I'm very happy with. It's probably costing them around $500 million, and it's going to be all cash, likely why they're keeping all this cash on their balance sheet. And I think this acquisition is going to help the fastest growing part of their business. So we'll be talking about that late in the future as well. Before that, Tom Lee, he's on CNBC. Let's get his thoughts on what he thinks is going on with tariffs and if he continues to be bullish through all this volatility.
Backdrop?
Yes. I mean, I think I know what you're saying, which is I do think markets are getting a little desensitized.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it is if someone had an investor hat on, not tactical hat, you know, really good opportunities are emerging because the number of stocks below the 200-day moving average was like 15%. Historically, that's a strong buy signal. I mean, you're going to find a lot of bargains there. And the VIX got above 50, and it almost always pays you to buy the stocks when VIX is above 50. But in the near term, it's a roller coaster. I mean, it does feel like we're having a lot of zigs and zags, and even over the weekend. But to me, I think everything that happened over the weekend, including the Sunday further explanations, all of this is still unequivocally positive for stocks.
Interesting. So when we were below 5,000 and you were on the S&P and you were at 7,100, that's like 40%. So you're now, and were you one of the high people on the street at 7,100? Were you there?
Well, our year end originally was 6,600, but we thought we could touch 7,000 mid-year. I think the 6,600 is still possible, but I do think the 7,100 mid-year is obviously, it'd be very difficult to reach,
So
but it's possible.
6,600 by year end. What about, you've made a lot of good calls based on moderating inflation. What did you make those numbers at the end of the week?
Well, I think that if we didn't have to consider tariffs, inflation is definitely tracking below expectations.
I mean, where the Fed wants it, almost. Right?
Yeah. I mean, core inflation month over month at 0.00056. I mean, that's like literally hitting a wall.
Now, is that for good reasons or for bad reasons?
I think it's for the right reasons because,
Oil?
Yeah, well, there's oil and foods off the boil, but it really is shelter is actually cooling to a 2% rate. And that is what you need to get inflation back down to 2.
Do you, at this point, foresee the worst case scenario in terms of dollar declines, 10-year yields due to people the Journal had an interesting piece today that it doesn't need to be that people just abandon the dollar and abandon the United States to invest in. It's just on the margin because it's a given that you cannot ignore the United States is the elephant in the room globally for all these things, for the, the currency, investments. But on the margin, it could make a big difference if there was even a slight lessening of what we were used to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is the narrative at the moment that, U.S. exceptionalism's over and people are selling treasuries and dollars to buy other assets. But I'm not in that camp that it's sustainable because unless weaker dollar and higher yields suddenly makes the best companies in the world outside the U.S., the best and the most important companies in the world are American companies. They've produced the best shareholder returns. And, if you look at the S&P, 40% of the returns of the S&P come from new companies every 10 years. Is there going to be suddenly the best new company coming out of Europe instead of the U.S. because of the dollar? And I doubt it. And I think U.S. companies are going to adapt.
So those are a bunch of geese. They lay a lot of golden eggs. And Trump is, he's a lot of things. But someone got to him on these important companies, and that you've got these ideas about China and you've got these ideas about, bringing manufacturing back here, but you cannot, I think that's what you meant by a lot of what happened over the weekend was positive. He actually looked into the abyss and said, look, I'm not going to do this to Apple. I'm not going to do this to the Magnificent Seven.
That's right. I would guess that means there's more voices in the room, and the voices in the room are the Jamie Dimons and Tim Cooks and the companies explaining that they're caught up in this tempest, and it's really, they need the time to actually change supply chains. So that's why I think this exemption, even if it's just a stay of execution, really buys time for companies.
All right. So what is Tom Lee talking about? If you did not know what happened over the weekend, essentially the administration came out and said, hey, iPhones, laptops, semiconductors, etc., none of that is going to be included in the reciprocal tariffs, which is really bullish, right? Because now an iPhone doesn't have to go through 145% tariff. Now, what they clarified on Sunday, yesterday, is that they will have a tariff. A minimum of 20% is what my understanding of it is. So like an iPhone, like Apple will have to pay 20% on their phones from China, but they won't have to pay 150%, which is why Apple's up 7% right now, because the market's like, all right, that's Apple doesn't deserve to be $168. If we're not having 150% tariff, we can bump it up to 210, which is currently where we are right now. Nvidia, same thing. I mean, the semiconductors were never really included in that in the reciprocal tariffs, but I guess more clarity over the weekend got the market excited to like have confirmation that the semiconductors are not included, and that's what also helped Nvidia continue to gain some more momentum. By the way, folks, we got some breaking news right here on Nvidia. Here we go. Nvidia announces they will manufacture American-made AI supercomputers in the US for the first time ever. Within the next 4 years, Nvidia plans to produce up to 500 billion of AI infrastructure in the US. That is hot off the presses. That came out literally right now. I am trying to pull up the actual press release right here. Yeah, here we go. It looks like Nvidia is saying we are going to invest heavily in the United States. Real quick, let's look at the stock. Nvidia Palantir, 7.74%, baby. Nvidia 4%, 115. Crossing 115 on Nvidia. It's been a long time since we had some big Palantir news. It's been a long time since we had some big Nvidia news as well. And here we go. All right, from the press release just now. NVIDIA is working with its manufacturing partners to design and build factories that for the first time will produce NVIDIA AI supercomputers entirely in the US. Together with leading manufacturing partners, the company has commissioned more than 1 million square feet of manufacturing space to build and test NVIDIA Blackwell chips in Arizona and an AI supercomputer in Texas. NVIDIA Blackwell chips have started production at TSMC's chip plants in Phoenix, Arizona, not Taiwan, Arizona. Wow. This is a big win for American manufacturing. NVIDIA is building a supercomputer manufacturing plant in Texas with Foxconn in Houston and in Dallas. Mass production at both plants is expected to ramp up in the next 12 to 15 months. The AI chip and supercomputer supply chains is complex and demands the most advanced manufacturing, packaging, assembly, and test technologies. NVIDIA is partnering with Amkor and SPIL for packaging and testing operations in Arizona. I believe those are two other American companies. Within the next 4 years, NVIDIA plans to produce up to $500 billion of AI infrastructure, which a lot of that probably includes chips. These world-leading companies are deepening their partnership with NVIDIA, TSMC, Foxconn, etc., growing their businesses while expanding their global footprint and hardening supply chain resilience. NVIDIA AI supercomputers are the engines of a new type of data center created for the sole purpose of processing AI. AI factories that are built with the infrastructure powering a new AI industry. Tens of gigawatts AI factories are expected to be built in the coming years. Manufacturing NVIDIA AI chips and supercomputers for American AI factories is expected to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Wow. And drive trillions of dollars in economic security over the coming decades. Jensen says the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. Whoa, that's a hell of a quote. That's a hell of a quote by Mr. Jensen. The engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. You know, Trump's looking at that quote and he's happy right now. Adding American manufacturing helps us better meet the incredible and growing demand for AI chips and supercomputers, strengthens our supply chain, and boosts our resiliency. Yeah, that's one of those quotes that Jensen made sure to include in the press release because he knows Trump is going to read this. All right, this looks like a win for Trump. This looks like Trump's definitely going to claim victory off this. Trump's going to be live, I think, at 11 and at 3 p.m. today, if I'm not wrong. I would imagine that he's going to mention that NVIDIA is bringing American manufacturing back to the semiconductor ecosystem in the United States. And by the way, as an American, like, we need this. Forget if it's a win for Trump or not. We really need chip security in the United States. There's some stuff, obviously, that we don't need to manufacture. That's not that important. Chips, the more and more we can diversify from Taiwan Semi, the better. Not because Taiwan Semi is bad, but just because there is that inherent threat of a China invasion, right? And from that perspective, we absolutely need chip security. This is the one industry I would say, like, this is everything I think Trump should be putting his force behind to be able to bring to the United States. So it looks like TSMC, Foxconn, and NVIDIA partnering together, Robinhood right here at 4% of the pre-market, to build out new AI data centers. Vistra and VRT, are they up on this? VSG Yeah, that's up 4%. And VRT, that's up 5% as well. I would imagine all the data center stocks, all the semiconductor stocks, as this headline continues to proliferate, are going to gain some momentum. You've got new jobs coming. You've got new data center build outs. You've got a 12 to 15 month ramp up. So they're going to spend the next year actually building out all this stuff. And you've got the fabs in Arizona being central to being able to build all this stuff, which is important because those fabs in Arizona, obviously we want to get those fabs to just get more important so that we can actually build more chips in Arizona and then potentially build more fabs across the entire world in the United States, not just in Arizona, which is where the main TSMC fabs are currently located. SMCI right here up 5%, AMD's up 4%, NVIDIA up 3.4%, Broadcom's up 2%, Qualcomm's up 2%, TSM's up 1%, Marvell's up 4%. Again, TSM has earnings later this week. Dell's up 8%, and then Micron right here up 7.55% on the day. Jensen's trying to dodge the tariff bullet. Yeah, I think not only that, he did spend $1 million to attend some event, some dinner with Trump a couple weeks ago. And then number 3, the Trump administration said semiconductors will get a tariff eventually. It'll just be a different bucket of tariff. It won't be a reciprocal tariff. Who knows? Maybe Trump sees this news today and he's like, yeah, we don't need to give another semiconductor tariff because the companies that are running the semiconductor supply chains, the companies that are building the chips are actually doing what we want them to do, which is build in the United States, which is the whole point of using the tariff to threaten in the first place. So not bad. Not bad at all. Big for NVIDIA and big for Palantir today. Rob, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thoughts on recent Sham Sanker interview with Rob Ryan? It's with Sean Ryan. I saw some of it. I didn't get to see all of it, but there were some really good clips in it. I'm still finishing that interview. But Sham is Sham, right? He's been preaching this American reindustrialization message for a long time. He's been preaching about the idea that defense contractors need to have a much better way to be able to sell into the government. So from my understanding, the interview has done very well. And I think it's like almost at 500,000 views or something. So it's a really big show that he went on, and he got to continuously preach why Palantir uniquely is playing a pivotal role currently right now. And as a result, I mean, that and the NATO news today, just a lot of good press for Palantir. Wow, 7.6%, 95.25. If we get a good macro going into earnings, which is about 2 weeks away, I mean, we're $5 away from 100, guys. It's not unfathomable that we see that again. And if the growth is really there, like we need it to be there in Q1, you never know. This could be a repeat of what we saw in Q4. Again, I don't want to get my hopes up. Trump could say something tomorrow and ruin everything. But this does look like it's market momentum across the board. It really does look like some solid momentum. Obviously, at 9:30, we'll see if this gets sold off or if this gets bought into. I guess here's the first question for everyone today. Do you sell into this or do you hold? Right? Do you sell into the rip, which is what a lot of people have been waiting for? They've been waiting for again their bags. Or market to the rip. Yes. We're going to offload something in this momentum that we're currently. Again, it's more so just buy and hold in DCA. That is the strategy here. But I can't blame anyone for feeling scared and wanting to offload a little bit of their momentum. I'm not ringing the big Palantir bell. I can't do it. Is the audio actually dead? Okay, I think you guys are right. The audio is dead. Hold on, let me fix. The audio actually dead? Wait, no, the audio is it good? Hold on. Okay, how about now? We're good. It was choppy. What I was saying is I'm not going to ring the big Palantir bell. And this damn stock goes down, I will not hear the end of it from you guys. So I'm not doing it. You know when I think we can ring the big Palantir bell? I think we can ring it after we hit or after we surpass the all-time highs that we were at last time, which was 125. And then it makes more sense. If it's still choppy, restart your YouTube. If it's still choppy. That's a YouTube thing that happened last week. If it's still choppy, restart YouTube. I'm more likely than not that's going to fix it. More like just refresh the app or exit the browser. It'll likely fix it. Because I'm seeing on my phone right now things are good. So it shouldn't be too bad. Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, so in the context of the big Palantir bell, we're going to so 130. 130 is when we freaking ring that bell. Because if I ring it before and we tank, I will not hear the end of it from you guys about how the big bell was the top. So, but yeah, in general, this is really good news for Palantir. Really strong momentum. Again, if you're just joining, we got a massive NATO deal with Palantir today, and that NATO deal seems like it'll set up, in my opinion, for more European expansion, more international growth, which is pretty much everything that we currently need right now. In the pre-markets again, Palantir, wow, 8%, 7.9. Nvidia up almost 4%. Robinhood up 4%. I mean, if we don't get any crazy headlines, I think we're setting up for a hell of a day. And remember, we are still relatively lower than we're still about, was it 9%, 8.5% for the year? We're down on the S&P. So it's not like this is from all-time highs and we're pumping. We're still meaningfully lower than where we were in February. And so any momentum could be just us catching up to where we were before, which is not too bad. Tesla right here up 2.29%. Goldman Sachs, real quick, I want to look at their earnings. So Goldman Sachs is up 3% as well, continuing with the trend of the banks doing incredible. Morgan Stanley did great last week. BlackRock did great last week. JP Morgan did great last week. Wells Fargo did great last week. Look at Goldman Sachs's numbers. Again, continuing to show that the banks are proving this economy is not in a bad situation. EPS 14.12 versus 12.28 expected. That's a 15% beat on EPS. Revenue 2% beat. Again, EPS matters a lot more than revenue. It's the question of just like how much money comes down to, into the bottom line, which is what builds the multiple on earnings. But for that to beat by 15% is incredible. EPS is up 22% year over year. Revenue is up 9% quarter over quarter. EPS is up 18% quarter over quarter. And then overall top line revenue is up 6% year over year. And they're doing a $40 billion buyback. I mean, come on, bro. Like the banks are not proving that this quarter is going to suck. I haven't looked at the guidance. I haven't looked at what Goldman Sachs said for Q2, but Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, all of them unilaterally having just incredible earnings. It's hard to deny that the tech companies are not going to follow that up given the quarter that some of these banks are putting up. Mike Wilson, let's get his thoughts from Morgan Stanley, and let's see if he thinks we are out of the woods now when it comes to tariffs, or if we have a little bit more pain to deal with going into the rest of the year.
U.S. equity strategist for Morgan Stanley. We had Tom Lee on. He's at 6,600 possibly by the end of the year. If you, I don't know what you are at this point. Last time that you were on, you were concerned, I think, a little bit. Are you concerned, or are you? I can't even say those words together. Cautiously optimistic or optimistically cautious?
Well, good morning. I think what we're trying to do is navigate what's a bear market. We're in a bear market. I think it started a lot earlier than people are suggesting.
Before the tariffs.
Oh yeah, I think it started last summer in a lot of areas. We navigated a risk of a recession. The Fed did a good job of cutting rates, and we had a big rally into year end. But then we just got overcooked, and the fundamentals have been deteriorating for quite a while. So, like, our main message to clients right now is, first of all, we're not focused on 12-month targets. We're focused on how we're going to navigate the next 3 to 6 months. How do we take advantage of that? I think this correction is very well advanced, both in price and time. And I think that's the most important thing to observe, which is we've been correcting in many areas for almost a year. Okay, and that's important as a technician and somebody trying to navigate the markets. Markets are ahead of the fundamentals. They're always ahead of the fundamentals by 6 to 12 months. And that's what we're trying to figure out. We don't want to get too bearish at the lows. So like last Monday was a clear capitulation day, right? That was the moment of recognition that, hey, we may be going over the edge here on a recession. And we priced a lot, right? 4,900, 4,850 was kind of a level that we've been kind of searching for. We found that level. We've had a 1,000-point rally, as you mentioned, in 2 days, okay? So now we're stuck in a range. Now the markets are going to do what they always do. They're going to be volatile until we have clarity on how deep this growth slowdown is going to be. And then what does the recovery look like coming out of that?
So we didn't have a closing low in bear market territory for the S&P. We did not. But did we get there intraday? We got close.
Well, we definitely got there intraday, but I mean, that's sort of semantics to me.
Okay, then which then to watch what needs to make a bottom? What is it? The Russell? Is it the?
Well, first of all, we're navigating what I think is going to be a very tricky trading environment, probably for the next 2 to 3 months at a minimum, because for all the reasons you've been talking about and everybody's talking about, we don't really have an idea yet. Like, okay, so tail risk on recession has gone up. We're at like a 40% chance, maybe higher, who knows? And until there's clarity on that aspect, which by the way is not just a function of tariffs. Tariffs to me is kind of the final blow to an economy that was already weakening for a period of time. And we can talk about those things. So the market now has to navigate this. And we also have a Fed that's on hold. another thing that I think is different than what was going on last fall, where they were being very generous with stimulus. So we're just sort of trapped in.
They're on hold because of the tariffs?
That's what they're telling us, right? They're telling us that they are still worried about inflation, mainly because of the tariff risk.
We had good numbers last week.
That's right. And so we'll see, but they're going to be slow on the draw. And that's a very unusual position for equity investors to be in. Equity investors are used to being sort of, benefits bailed out, so to speak, from the Fed or from fiscal stimulus. And right now, both of those are on hold. And so we're kind of flying without a safety net, and earnings have already been deteriorating for a period of time.
You almost painted that same scenario a couple of years ago when you were bearish for too long. You thought the earnings were decelerating and maybe we were going to have a slowdown back then. And that didn't happen because, as you just said, the Fed.
That's true. And Mike Wilson got it wrong. And, a lot of clients at JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley did not make a lot of money. So this was the exact same argument he had about a year and a half ago. It didn't turn out to be as bearish as he thought it was going to be. Obviously, this time we're going to see what happens at the end of 2025.
Ed handled it with some rate cuts. You don't think we're not going to get bailed out this time?
Well, it's different in that period too, Joe. So we look at the internals of the stock market, and the internals of the stock market have been telling us for a while that this growth slowdown is much more dangerous or negative than the one we saw in 2022. Don't forget, in 2022, growth was actually really good, and that was the reason why the Fed had been raising rates. So growth was good. Now we have growth not so good, and the Fed's no longer cutting. Or
we're up 60% from what we were. I was saying, remember my bet with Larian? That was at 3,600, and I said it was going to go above 4,000 first. He said it's going to test the lows, and in one day it tested the lows, and he won.
That's right.
But we were arguing at 3,500. We got over. What was the high on the S&P?
6,100. At 3,600, we did flip bullish, as you recall, in the fall of 2022. Right. We caught that low really nicely.
60% from there, 70%.
Yeah. I mean, look, the point here is that we're now in an environment that is obvious. Okay, 6 months ago that was not obvious, which is why markets were priced for too much goodness at 6,100.
Well, you think we've seen the worst?
I think we've seen the worst of the momentum. That's what we wrote about this morning. Is that we've probably made the momentum low, like the capitulatory low for this correction, whatever it's going to end up being, whether it's 20%, 25%, or whatever.
Do you think it's all uphill from here?
No, I think it's going to be a lot of testing. I think now the markets the patient had a heart attack. Okay, now the patient has to recover. That's different than we saw last fall or last summer, where we had a very short sell-off in the summer. We didn't create a lot of damage. Now we have some more damage, and we just got to work through that. And that's the opportunity at the stock level. Okay, so if you look at some of these cyclical groups, I mean, like semiconductors are down 50% from last summer. Okay, most of that damage happened way before the tariffs happened. So this is just a wake up. Like this, just now.
Right, but you're looking at this in a very.
Okay, so look, from that perspective, I think that I don't disagree with the choppiness that what's his name, Mike Wilson is talking about. But I also think that the earnings picture for a bull case is pretty simple to me. Goldman Sachs right here up 4%. Good earnings. Wow, Palantir 8.13. We got the market open in 6 minutes. Earnings come in good. Inflation comes in down. Tariff volatility goes away. Bond yields come down. We have a bull market. It's that simple. Those are the four arguments, in my opinion. We get good earnings, which the banks are already proving that we are. That's part one. Part two is inflation coming down. CPI, PPI last week was phenomenal. That's part two. That's in the right direction. Tariff volatility goes away. That really we haven't got rid of. I mean, we got some clarifications, but I'm very skeptical on what would happen within the next few weeks because Trump can say anything, Lutnick can say anything. So that one's we still have to resolve. And then the fourth one was yields come down, which yields are actually a function of the tariff volatility coming down, and then the yields will come down, which they're starting to come down this morning because we got a little bit of clarity, but we need them to meaningfully come down. Realistically, I mean, I think it would be amazing if we can get the 10-year closer to 4 or right below 4, but that might just take some time to get there. We get those four things, we have a bull market again because capital's not going to go to gold. It's going to go into equities. It's going to go into stuff that can actually compound, especially if the growth rates are strong. Everyone was taking down their earnings forecast from like 11% year-over-year growth to 0% year-over-year growth. That's why you got all these S&P 500 targets going back to 5,200, 5,300, et cetera. We're past those targets because if earnings growth is going to be even not 11%, let's say 7%, 8%. So it's about 30% lower than what the expectations were. You still probably get at least to 6,000 on the earnings multiples, if not 61, 6,200. So maybe not super 67, 6,800 bullish, but still meaningfully higher from where we are right now, even if it's just going back to those February highs at 61, 62, which I don't think anyone would hate the year ending off at 6,200 on the S&P, given that we were at 4,800 4 days ago. So there's momentum. And then you got to factor in this other dynamic component that can be pretty aggressive as well, which is FOMO, right? If the market starts running aggressively and you felt that you missed every single opportunity, which theoretically could become a generational opportunity based on all this tariff volatility, I mean, people are obviously going to be upset and they're going to want to get in. And so that's what we might get when it comes to NVIDIA and the overall bull market. So yeah, I agree. The trade war is not over yet. I'm not trying to be super euphoric here. I'm not trying to say it's done. I'm just saying, and this is one thing where like, maybe it's going to get worse from here, but like how much worse could it get? China and the US are putting 150% tariffs on each other, right? Like how much worse, like that's why I got into TLT on Friday. Like when I was looking at yields, I was like, I think yields are topping. Like what else could go that much more wrong in the context of this trade war that escalates it to such an extent? Like I feel like it's escalated. Could it go higher? Sure. But at some point, China is also going to want a resolution. Same with the United States. And if there will be a resolution anytime soon, realistically, I mean, we could have tariffs across the entire world. If we get a China deal done, I think that's all the market cares about. And the EU, we probably have about, I would say, another month or 2 months to get a deal done with them. And then if the administration says, hey, we got this major deal with Vietnam, we got this major deal with Thailand, we got this major deal with Venezuela, or whatever deals they can announce, and, really marketing and communication is important here. If they can explicitly show we've got some serious concessions, which again, I'm skeptical about like how much pain did we have to go through for you to get a couple of concessions? Like they've got to really show some serious concessions. But if we get those deals done, I mean, that's just pouring good news on top of a market that is still down from all-time highs. But in this market, volatility is the name of the game. And this is why covered calls have been working this year. We just don't know. Things could change in an instant. We are getting a red candle right there on NVIDIA 2 minutes before the open. Are we seeing that on the S&P? We're not seeing that on Palantir. Palantir continues to go higher, 8.2%. What about Hood? Hood, yeah, there's a red candle on Hood as well. Okay, so this could be algos dumping right before we open. This could be people saying, hey, I don't want to trust the market open. I want to get out of my stocks right now. It could be a variety of reasons. I don't think there's anything macro. Trump didn't tweet. I don't see anything there. Trump is speaking later today. So I guess based on whatever he says, that will make different headlines. But I don't see any core things that could cause a pre-market sell-off a minute before we get into the market open. But again, anything could happen in this environment. S&P, though, S&P is not showing any weakness. NVIDIA and Hood taking a little bit of a dip. S&P right there is up almost 2%, 1.9% on the day. It's pretty damn incredible. We're seeing a sort of full-on market pump going back into what we saw on Friday as well. All right, here we go. Another week of trading, the third week of trading for Q2. It's time to see if we can hold on to these gains, maintain this momentum, or if we have to go through the ups and downs that we went through last week, which still ended 5.7%, best week for the S&P 500 since November 2023. Here we go. Monday, April 14th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. Palantir pumps in 96.32. It's about to go up 9%. My goodness. Look at that. It has been a while since we've seen a pump like this on Palantir. And there we go. 96.12 on Palantir, up 8.54%. Robinhood up about 2.5%. Goldman Sachs is up 3%. NVIDIA giving away the pump. Giving away a little bit of the pump. So NVIDIA is not able to hold on to it. There are definitely people selling into the rip right here. Look at that, 113 from 115. This is why I'm, I'll probably have to roll the covered calls, but this is what I'm saying. Like this one in particular this year has not been able to sustain a ton of momentum. It's still down about 20% for the year. But we're going to see if this is just a quick dump in the morning and then we get a reversal. Webull up 103%. That went IPO on Friday. That one's going crazy. Volume right there is about 3 billion shares. Apple, 7.3%. Apple was at 168 last Wednesday. Apple now is at 212 after realizing that their iPhones will not be tariffed at 150%. S&P 500, 1.7%. ARM is up 5%. Amazon is up 1%. Amazon not getting as much love as Apple. That's weird. Amazon has a lot of stuff in China as well. You would think, well, actually, no, this makes sense. A lot of Amazon stuff is going to be tariffed at 145%. Yeah. The exemption was for laptops and phones, not for suitcases that get built in China, right? So yeah, actually it makes sense that Apple's pumping a lot more than Amazon right here. AMD's up 4%, HIMS is up 5%, SMCI is up 5%, TLT up about 1% on the day. Celsius right here up about 1.42, Tesla 3.4, Tesla back at 260. Nice to see. We have earnings on Tesla next week. That's going to be very important. JP Morgan's up 0.5%. SoFi up 3.65. Energy Transfer, that's up 1.59%. We're seeing all the pipelines get a little bit of love here as well. GameStop up 1.6. Shopify up 4.9. Shopify got hit bad last week as well with the tariff volatility. Look at Palantir, 9.6% on Palantir. 9.6%. Let me check resistance right here and how aggressive of a wall that there might be on Palantir. No, it's nothing that crazy. At 98, there are 54,000 shares. I mean, that's up there, but it's not like 500,000 shares or anything. So if it wants to get through 97 right there, it's getting rejected right there, that 97.50 level, then 98 will require about 54,000 shares, which is not crazy. But even if we hold 5% for the day, I would be happy. It's been a while since we had a day like that for Palantir. Cisco right here is about 1%. NVIDIA, again, giving away a lot of the pump. I think people are selling into that rip. I would not be surprised with a reversal, but also could see it continuing to kind of flail out from here. Same thing with Apple, giving away a little bit of that pump. There's that red candle on Apple, 209.5 on Apple. Bitcoin right here, 84.5. I did buy iBit last week as well. I think when Bitcoin was around 82. So Bitcoin doing okay. S&P 500 giving away a little bit of pump as well. It was up 2%. Now it's up 1.6. But the overall market still going green. Tesla right here at 3.3 up on the day. And then Palantir right back to 9.3%. It looks like Palantir wants to end the day pretty damn green, even if it's not 10, 15% green. I would say there's a shot we close above 5% green today. That's what it looks like on Palantir. Bull halted. Okay. Makes sense that Bull is halted. This one is becoming, I mean, dude, their ticker symbol is Bull. Like, this is Wall Street's dream, or not Wall Street, Wall Street Bets' dream, right? To have a ticker symbol called BUL. I'm surprised no one ever took that ticker before. But yeah, that one. Look, I don't know anything about the financials, so I can't get super excited about it. I think Webull's a cool company. It is a Chinese company, which is already one thing that they eliminates it from a lot of people's investing thesis. But yeah, I've not gone through the financials on this one. 129%. That one is now halted. Where's Newsmax? That one, 23.6. All right, so Newsmax is now at an appropriate level. It IPO'd at 10. I think 23 is still aggressive for it to double, but 23 is more reasonable than 250. If you look at the chart right here, got to 287. Now it's back down to 23. I would not be surprised if this falls back to 15. That would be a reasonable pump from 10 to 15 on IPO. But Newsmax, if they allowed us to buy puts, would have bought them when we had a chance. Dell's up 7%. All the semis are rallying off of NVIDIA, but NVIDIA itself is not necessarily getting a ton of love right here. Basically up about 2%. Where are the semis? Yeah, all the semis are green, more than NVIDIA. Pretty much all of them are outperforming NVIDIA right now. Intel, ON, ASML, Broadcom. TSM's going red. Interesting. Given the partnership announcement today, that's weird that they're going red. ARM right here is up 3%. Dell's up 5%. Then Micron right here is up 5.59%. It was up 7%. That one's down a little bit. Webull went public just to get delisted on the next Trump tantrum. Yeah, the administration did say they are planning to get rid of Chinese stocks on U.S. exchanges if they need to retaliate. I don't really think that's going to happen. But again, that's my point. It's like when the trade war is getting to this level of intensity, at some point they're going to get a deal done. I would hope. And if that happens, we should get some more momentum. All right, so we are getting red candles across the board. It is 9:35, 5 minutes until the market opens. SoFi can barely hold above 11 right now. It's at 1094. S&P went from up 2 to up 1.5. Not like we can't be grateful for the green that we're seeing, but we are seeing it get faded at least a little bit across the board. Palantir right here. Where is Palantir? Well, you're at 94.99. Yeah, that was at 97. Now back to 94. Grab is up 2% of the day. We'll talk more about the Grab acquisition in a bit, but Grab bought a bank. One of their banks in Singapore bought another bank. And the estimate is around 400 to 500 million bucks they paid in cash. Based on the research I did this morning, it's a really good acquisition. Like their loan portfolio is about to expand like crazy. Financial services growing 40%. So we'll talk more about that acquisition, but I think it's a really good one. And it's for the part of the business that's growing the best. It's not for ride hailing, not for deliveries. It's for financial services, which is growing like aggressively. So more acquisitions they do in that space is definitely beneficial. Grab right there, up about 2%. Robinhood giving away a lot of its pump, 43.92. Look at that, 45 to 43. It's very close, 20 cents away from going red. Same with NVIDIA, $1 away from going red. Those two individual names I could see going red while the S&P still holds up, but S&P is also getting some red. Q's getting some red, 1.6%, and then Apple was up 7, now it's up 5. Still green. Palantir as well was up 9%, now it's up 6. As we start to see some of the move fade across the market. Also, aren't those people going to space today? Isn't that happening? Isn't Bezos' wife going to space and Katy Perry? I think that's happening soon. Okay, Trump just tweeted. He said, Trump just said the best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. Okay. I guess we went from tariff tweets to philosophical statements, I guess. The best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. Okay. There we go. I don't know if that's going to move markets. But is he talking about Palantir and predictive analytics? Like, is that what he's saying? Predict the future? Like, what's this? The best definition of intelligence, the ability to predict the future. All right. That's the quote from Trump. Webull unhalted. That one's up 130%, still getting momentum. Robinhood right back up to almost 2%, then Palantir up almost to 8%. Wow, what a market, dude. These things are swinging back and forth pretty aggressively. Goldman Sachs was up 5%, now it's up 2.3%. Everything's still pretty green, along with Apple, 208 right here. The Q's at 1.6, but they are getting whipsawed back and forth, just not as aggressively to the downside. What else are we seeing? He is saying buy. I don't think he's necessarily saying buy. Last time he said buy, he said it pretty explicitly. But who knows at this point? Who knows? Again, I don't think the headline volatility is necessarily gone from Trump. We're going to probably see more of it this week. But if it's contained, if it's just like not as bad as what most people got last week, then we're going to see this 10-year and 30-year that are going down pretty nicely, bro. We are starting to see some basis points decline right here on the 30-year and on the 10-year. Look at that, 4.3, baby. There you go. It's coming down. This was at 4.5 2 days ago, and even last night it was at 4.47. So seeing that come down on every little basis point that comes down is very aggressive for the bond market, and that's important. Amazon goes red. Okay, I guess we couldn't predict in the future that Amazon was going red, even though Trump said the best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. Amazon, there she goes, red. NVIDIA still holding. Robinhood still holding. I think Amazon's red again for the reason I just talked about, which is that most of their products are not excluded from the 145% tariffs yet. Eventually, when that 145 becomes 20 or 25 or whatever, that'll be good for Amazon. But most of the products are still going to be subject to those tariffs. Apple basically gets away with everything not being excluded. S&P 1.2, it was up 2%, so it gave up 0.8. 540, trying to hold on to those levels. TLT is still green. SMCI is up about 3%. Tesla also, wow, 260 to 255. So you're really seeing it across the board. Nothing's able to hold on to all of their green, even though they are still green, which maybe is the best that we can ask for. Palantir as well, getting chopped around between 94 and 97, but right back down to the low 94s currently right now. When Trump says predict the future, he's talking about futures in the stock market. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He is talking about futures in the stock market. Real quick, guys, let me just put this link right here in the chat because I know people have been asking for it. The Toronto meetup is happening April 26th. I'm putting the link right here. So if you want to sign up, I'll put it on Twitter later today. But if you are in Toronto, I'll pin this right now. You can come through April 26th. And I don't know exactly what the location is going to be. I will send details. When you sign up on this forum, you'll get an email probably by like Wednesday. I'll send an email with all the details. And yeah, we're doing the third meetup of the year in Canada. We did NYC and Palo Alto this year, which was very exciting. And Canada's next. Palantir right here at 93.64. That one's falling from 94. There's that red candle, 97 to 93. Again, if you just joined, we got a major NATO contract around an AI operating system for the battlefield in conjunction with Palantir. We don't have the terms of the agreement in terms of how much money we're making from this. I would imagine it's, in the multi-tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't know how many years it's for, but it's a pretty big contract, just even from a substantial perspective, to get deeper into Europe, given a lot of those NATO countries are European countries. And that's why Palantir right here is up about 5.5% currently right now. Bull is halted again. That is correct. Bull got halted again. Seems like traders are piling into Bull. And that's why that's getting halted. Amit, are you coming to California this year? So I already went to Palo Alto, right? We did a meetup there. We will be doing an LA meetup, most likely towards the fall. So I know SoCal, that's a big one that everyone wanted. So we will definitely do Los Angeles later in the year. I'm probably going to be back in California at least 4 to 5 times later this year. But LA, we will do a proper meetup probably in September, October, around that time. S&P right here, 540. That's up about 1.16. So that one's giving up its gains as well, even though it's still green. Tesla's about to go red completely. Oof. This is the nature of this market, bro. This is why covered calls have worked this year. It's like, it really is hard to build a full-on bull trend. Whereas last year, 2024, every day was at least up another 0.2, 0.3, and it just kept building on the momentum from the previous day. Robinhood about to go red as well, 43.84 currently right now. Is TLT moving? TLT is moving up 1%. Okay. Let's check on my TLT calls. Are they in the green? No, they're in the red. So I bought them at 205. They're currently at $2. So we're down about 150. So I bought 15 of those at 208. That's my average cost on TLT, expiring Jan 2026, $100 strike. And realistically, we need TLT to get closer to that 94, 95 era for this one to print. So that means yields have to come down. That's my bet. The yields are going to be coming down. NVIDIA, wow, about to lose its steam. Look at that, 111.59. NVIDIA about to lose its steam as well. VIX is down 10%. Yeah, that is nice. I mean, volatility. VIX is down 14%, dude. We're seeing volatility die down. But you know what's happening, dude? I think people are selling into the rip. I think that's what it is. I really do. I think people have been really upset with all the volatility, and if they're getting a chance to leave, they're taking that chance. Same thing with Palantir. I mean, you got some people probably about Palantir like 83, 84, 87, and they thought it was going to be okay, and then it went down to 65. They're probably super scared. They're seeing their exit right here at 93. They're getting out. So I could definitely see that happening. Robinhood is very close to going red, and NVIDIA now is 73 cents away from going red. That doesn't take away from the NVIDIA headline, though. The NVIDIA headline was phenomenal. For those that are just joining, the NVIDIA headline is that they're going to be building $500 billion worth of technology in the United States, an AI supercomputer in combination with TSMC, Foxconn, and a variety of other companies. They're going to be building gigawatt AI factories. This is going to take about a year to set up. Jensen said the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. So I definitely think Trump's going to talk about this later today whenever he goes live. But that's definitely a big win for NVIDIA. Do LA in the summer? The summer's going to be busy, but I think end of August, there might be a chance to do LA. But June is definitely super busy. July is super busy. August, hopefully I'm moving out. I think that's the timeline that it's getting set up to be. But yeah, I think August there's a shot. If not, most likely September then. NVIDIA trying to hold on to 112. There's that little green candle right there bouncing from 111. Doesn't feel bearish though. It just feels like people are selling, which is fine. Like people can take some profits into this, but it doesn't feel like the same type of narrative we had last week. I don't see any headlines that would be causing this. If anyone sees anything, let me know. No Trump tweets. No, I really do think it's just people. I don't even think it's algos. I think people are just taking some profits. The Goldman CEO said prospects of a recession have increased. I think the Goldman call is going on right now. That's fine. I mean, every CEO has said prospects of a recession. I mean, like you can't deny there is a greater chance for a recession with these tariffs now, and in general with potential demand going down as we're seeing in the CPI, PPI numbers, because the reason they're negative is because people aren't spending as much, which means, people could be losing jobs, et cetera. But the job data hasn't shown us that a recession is soon, at least not yet. So I don't know if that headline's enough to move the market, that the prospects of an American recession have increased. Given, I think we all kind of know that at this point. Robinhood goes red. There she goes. She goes red. NVIDIA very close to going red, but still holding on just a little bit. Can you update us on China? There's 2 updates on China. Number 1 is that the United States walked back some of the reciprocal tariffs on different products made in China, like iPhones. That's why Apple's up 5% right now. The other update is that China is getting ready to stop the export of rare earth minerals to the United States, which is very important. Things like magnets, magnesium, et cetera, all these things that are relevant in the context of products that or raw materials that the United States uses. Now, Elon did have a response to this, and he tweeted about it yesterday. And his argument was like, it's not as serious as people think when it comes to the rare earth minerals. I'm trying to find his tweet, but he said there's more of a nuance to that than just assuming that it's gonna all go to crap. If I can find his tweet, because this guy tweets more than anyone on the planet. Dude, Elon really tweets a lot, bro. Like, and the funny thing is he quotes a tweet, like he'll quote tweet it and he'll just put a word. He'll be like interesting or whoa or cool or funny. It's just like, and then that tweet will get like 500 million views. Yeah, I can't find a tweet. I'll try to pull it up in a second. But basically he said, hey, it's not that big of a deal. We're going to have more rare earth minerals in the United States because there's different supply chains that hold it. But it's not a good thing for China to say, we're not going to export magnesium to you guys, That's not something that we want to see happening. NVIDIA right here, 112, and then Palantir, 92.90. That's the low of the day for Palantir. Starting to go more red. Oh, yeah, Derek, thank you for this. He said rare earth minerals are literally everywhere. China just has the refining. That's correct. That's basically what he said. Again, still not good that China's doing it, but it's not like an absolute death blow to the United States is basically what Elon's been trying to say. I walked away for 2 minutes and everything dropped. Yeah, that's the nature of these markets, bro. It's quite incredible to be living through this time and seeing it. But yes, you walk away for 2 minutes, everything. But same thing on Friday, right? You look away for 2 minutes and then everything's crazy green. Which again, yeah, on Friday, what was the headline? The headline was 2 things. Besant's looking at the treasury markets and that we have 15 trade offers on the table. That's what the White House said. That's all the market needed to get excited. That's it. Which is why I'm still pretty damn bullish, bro. Like at the end of the day, when we get these deals done, yields will come down. People are going to stop fleeing to gold. They're going to look at earnings growth. If there's no recession on the horizon because we don't have crazy job losses and we have inflation that's coming down, and that means the Fed is going to cut, which means mortgage rates are going to come down, auto loans are going to come down. Like we have the recipe set up to have a pretty incredible 2025, even in the midst of everything that has happened. And a lot of it will be catapulted by the Fed cutting. And the Fed has all the data in the world in the context of CPI, PPI to justify a cut. CPI is at 2.4%. The Fed funds rate's at 4.5. Like we don't need to be double the rate of inflation right now. And if that CPI comes in at 2.2 or 2. I mean, we are getting 50 basis points, I think, pretty soon. The reason I think they're not as aggressive to cut is because they're afraid that tariffs are going to be inflationary, which is fair. But then if Trump walks back the tariffs to be as aggressive as it is right now, J-Pal has no reason to be scared about cutting, which is important. The White House tweeted about NVIDIA. Okay, let's see what the White House said. They are definitely going to take credit for this. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Dude, one thing you've got to give credit for in the context of the White House, they know how to market, bro. The Biden White House didn't even use emojis in their tweets. Look at that. Like the White House knows how to like tweet. They know how to put out content. Like whoever's running the White House social media, they like actually like get like they're not afraid to take risks. They're not afraid to like use lingo that like people use on Twitter, like hashtags. Like they're actually engaging with the internet population in a way that's the right way to communicate. So from that perspective, I think the marketing of this administration has been pretty damn strong, dude. Like even the press secretary, they do this like White House daily minute update. Like they are really using X in a strategic way to get the message out there. It's just the message has kind of sucked over the past couple of weeks with all this volatility. But if that dies down, then hopefully that's not the worst. Apple right here up 4.5%. currently right now. Trump selecting the Tesla in front of the White House was the finest influencer marketing. Yeah, dude. I mean, and again, Biden did the same. I think he did it with what was the company? Jeep. He did it with Jeep or Ford, one of those. So it's like every president has done it. It's just the way the Trump administration is doing it in terms of marketing is not the worst in the world, especially given how much emphasis they're putting on social media. And again, that's why Trump won the election, in my opinion. Like, he did podcasts. He actually talked to people, not just CBS, right? And MSNBC. So when you're really embracing independent media, there's a lot of good impacts that can happen from that. Robinhood right here, slightly down on the day. Disney's up a little bit, 1.1%. Oracle's up, or IBM is up. Oracle, Steve made an article about this today. He thinks it's a hidden gem. I kind of disagree. I just think it's down with the rest of the market. I don't really think it's like a hidden gem. I haven't read the article yet, so I'm going to go through the numbers today. I'll put the link in the chat if anyone wants to check it out. But he's getting more excited about Oracle. So if anyone wants to take a look at that one, yeah, he rated it a strong buy on Seeking Alpha. So there you go. That's what we got for Seeking Alpha. Biden getting in a Jeep is not the same as Trump literally saying buy Tesla. Yeah, Biden should have said buy a Jeep. Like, if you're going to get in the Jeep, you might as well say buy it, right? That's the implication of getting in the Jeep, right? Is you want people to buy it. Trump just was explicit about it. He said buy it. Buy the damn Tesla. Now, buying Tesla stock is a whole different question, right? Obviously, Lutnick going on TV and saying you should buy Tesla, it's cheap. That's just ridiculous. You can't say that stuff. But still, I think most administrations do it the same way. S&P 500 right here up 1.3. So S&P still holding on to some of their momentum right here. Oracle isn't a hidden gem. It's well known and priced too high, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. As soon as Steve pitched it to us last night, I was like, hidden gem is interesting, bro. Because Oracle's not going to grow faster than a lot of the other AI names. I mean, they're going to grow, but their AI revenues are growing, not their top. I think their top line revenue is like 10 or 12%. Their AI revenues are like 40, 50%, but that's not top line. NVIDIA top line is like 50, 60%. So NVIDIA is not a hidden gem, but I would still say NVIDIA is a gem nonetheless. Baba's pumping. Is Baba pumping? Baba's up 6% as well. Interesting. Okay. So it looks like the market's rotating a little bit more into China. Webull just got halted for its third time today, dude. Goodness gracious. Wall Street Bets is going crazy with this stock. Up 148% on the day. 32.92, $15 billion market cap. Which, by the way, what's Robinhood's market cap? Robinhood's at 38. Webull is about 35% of Robinhood's market cap, and they do not have the type of growth Robinhood has, which tells me this is a lot of Wall Street Bets mania. This seems to be going on right now. Rheinmetall is pumping. Let's take a look at them. Rheinmetall stock. Yeah, they're up 3%. Year to date, Rheinmetall still, what is this? Has to be best performer of the year, right? Or one of the best performers of the year. 158% in the first 4 months of the year. This one's just been incredible. Absolutely incredible. Look at rare earth stocks. Okay, so what are some rare earth stocks? One of the main ones is MP, right? That's one of the main ones that's out there. Wow, look at MP up 18%. Yeah, that's one of the main rare earth stocks that I know about. Huh. Interesting. Even with the China news yesterday, that one's up 18% right here. ASPI, yeah, that's wait. So why are the rare earth mineral stocks pumping? Is it because if China's not going to export as much, then we have to build our own in the United States? And as a result, like there's just going to be more demand and more capital flowing into these names. That would be the logic, right? By the way, I do think China is not going to permanently halt rare earth minerals. Like they make a lot of money off that. So this is just a negotiation tactic from them as well. It's not good to see them doing that, but eventually that should go the other direction as well. Yeah, so it's basically, okay, so it's a rotation from some of the China demand to the US demand. Okay, that is fair. NVIDIA right here, 112, still up 1%. Palantir holding on to 6%, 94. Again, that big NATO contract today, very important for Palantir. Oracle's up 1.8, Apple's up 4. MP right here up 19. Baba up 6, and then Robinhood down just a little bit on the day. NVIDIA right here up 1.2. currently right now. Oh yeah, Sailor, he bought some more Bitcoin. So we did say yesterday on the Future Show that Sailor is probably going to be buying more Bitcoin because he tweeted the chart. So they bought 3,459 Bitcoin for 258 million, 82,000 a coin. Currently, Bitcoin is at 84. So now MicroStrategy at this point owns 531,000 Bitcoin. It's a lot of Bitcoin. It's a lot of Bitcoin. MicroStrategy, 308. Wow, it's back above 300. We haven't seen that in a minute as well. We saw 290s last week. 3.4% up on the day, 308 on MicroStrategy. Currently, right now. All right, there you go. More and more Bitcoin. More and more Bitcoin. Amit, did you see the Blue Origin landing? No. So did it already happen, the Blue Origin landing? Can we get a video of that? Let's see. They went up into space for like 11 minutes, right? That was the... Okay, so this was the launch video right here. This happened 24 minutes ago. So it had Gail King, Lauren Sanchez, Katy Perry. And I think they went to like the tip of space, like the very edge of space. There you go. That's on Blue Origin. So this is big for Bezos, a space company. And then they just landed about 15 minutes ago, it looks like. Yeah, they just landed. There you go. They just landed. Yep. Officially. There's the landing picture right there. All right, cool. Look, I mean, even if you're a fan of SpaceX, Rocket Lab, all this stuff, this is just good for the space, right? You want the space overall to continue to progress. This is the most important thing. So regardless of like Blue Origin versus SpaceX or whatever, you want the space to continuously gain momentum. There you go. That was the crew. Is Rocket Lab up at all on this? Can we see Rocket Lab? Are we getting any momentum? RKLB is basically flat, up 0.2. Up 0.2. Apple's up 4, Grab's up about 1.3, Palantir again up 6.3, and NVIDIA kind of holding on. The S&P in general is up still 1.24%. Apple is back over 3 trillion in market cap. Not bad. Apple continuing to be the largest company on the planet. 3.11 trillion. Again, this thing got to 168 last week, dude. I still think Apple's expensive. Oh, there was a headline this weekend that Apple is urgently pursuing a new version of the Vision Pro. By the way, I went to the Apple store over the weekend. Okay, I got like a MagSafe charger and an AirTag, and I asked the guy like, "Hey, do you guys still sell the Vision Pro?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course we sell the Vision Pro." And then I was like, "Does anyone buy the Vision Pro?" He looked over to me. He started smiling. And I was like, "Well, I mean," and I was like, "All right, I got it, dude." So like, yeah, the Vision Pro is not really selling, even though they still sell it. But a Bloomberg article on Saturday came out, or sorry, Wall Street Journal, and they said Apple CEO Tim Cook has made Apple looking for augmented reality glasses that someone can wear a top priority. Cook is reportedly hell-bent on creating an industry-leading product before Mark Zuckerberg. That's what the Wall Street Journal said. Tim cares about nothing else, quote unquote. It's the only thing he's really spending his time on from a product development standpoint. So maybe I'm underestimating Apple, and Apple is going to come out with something phenomenal when it comes to a consumer hardware device that is actually usable, that you don't have to hold the battery in. And maybe he beats Meta. And to be honest, bro, my bet's on Meta right now because I think Zuck's just like more ruthless about it, but it's Apple. Like Apple knows how to do consumer products better than everyone. So it wouldn't surprise me if Tim Cook comes in and really ends up taking the spotlight from Meta. But they're obviously going to have to move really quick to be able to do that. Palantir right here, still up 6%. NVIDIA up about 0.79% currently right now. They should fix Apple Intelligence and Siri first. Yeah, they have to do that. That is also fair. The AirTag is for my wallet because even right now, I have no idea where my wallet is. I lose that thing like literally every day. Did you do the demo? I did not do the demo. I just didn't feel like taking the time to do the demo with the Vision Pro. But like no one was doing that. But it was packed, bro. The Apple Store was packed. Like I thought I was gonna get in pretty quick, and it was just like there was a lot of people there. But no one was doing the demo. Most people, I think, were inquiring about a MacBook or a laptop, or sorry, a MacBook and an iPhone. That's what most people seem to care about. Webull up 180%, 37.39 on Webull. Look at that. New high of days for Webull. It'll probably get halted again, but wait, can we buy puts on Webull? Hold on, let's see. Is that open? Is that open? Do they give us a shot? This one I feel like could just keep pumping though. No, you can't buy puts. There's no options on Webull. Nothing. No options on Webull yet. Newsmax finally lets you do options, but not Webull. Webull's probably going to take a week before they have options. If it's still at this level in a week from now, that's fine, but usually they don't last for that long. Okay, what else? See, glasses will lead to eye implants, but in the meantime, glasses are a fad, like 3D glasses in the 1950s. You know, the eye implant thing is not that crazy because Neuralink, I feel like that's one of their next steps, right? Like not only chips in your brain, but a version of chips in other parts of your core senses, like touching, feeling, seeing, hearing, smelling, etc. So I think there's going to be a future where that happens, but I just think right now I don't buy the glasses thesis from Meta or Apple. I just think the iPhone is all people care about. Like they just need a phone. You would have to really figure out how to make it a consumer wearable that allows people to engage in the world without feeling like they're annoying people, without feeling like they're wearing something blonky over the head. Like you just gotta have something that doesn't feel like crap. And right now, that's what the Vision Pro feels like. So hopefully, eventually, we see a version that changes from here. Let's get an update on China and see what they're doing with their tariffs as well. And then we'll keep going from there. Arnie says, I still believe Apple glasses will be the #1 product, but it will take at least 3 to 5 years. Yeah, I wouldn't underestimate them. I would not underestimate Apple. Oh, the court trial on Meta. We're going to talk about that in a bit as well, because that's a big thing that's coming up, the antitrust stuff. So we'll talk more about Meta in a second.
On the whole, over the weekend, had acknowledged that the tariff exemptions were what they described as a small step, and even said that China was evaluating the impact. The state media, though, had said that this was a U.S. retreat and also more evidence that the Chinese supply chain is really, really important for the world. Today, though, probably because of a lot of the confusion around the messaging from the White House, the Chinese government doubled down on their overall stance. That is that the U.S. government should abolish the tariffs and the what they describe as wrongful actions around those tariffs. What was also interesting is that a state TV linked social media account, which is now closely watched for messaging on U.S.-China trade, just several hours ago elaborated a little bit further, saying that to the Trump team, their what they call delusion is China will compromise under high tariffs. The account goes on saying, if the U.S. really wants to talk, China needs to see real action. What was also interesting is that the same blogger account was hinting at who would be taken, what kind of step would be taken next. And the target, they said, was American IP and American brands. And then this blogger went on to suggest that Chinese people could reject them. And they said that they noted that Walt Disney and Comcast, which owns CNBC, have development and production businesses, theme parks, and consumer goods in China. They also mentioned Sony, Paramount Global, as well as Netflix. The messaging, though, overall, outside of that and the potential for countermeasures, is that there needs to be a lot of support for Chinese exporters, and that this is paramount. Carl, you mentioned President Xi's visit to Vietnam. He is there in Southeast Asia on a 3-nation tour, ostensibly to try to build up those trade ties. Today, he announced, or China and Vietnam announced that they had signed several trade negotiation deals. And then, of course, there is the private sector that is also getting involved to try to help redirect some of the goods that the exporters used to sell and I guess, so still do sell to the United States as well as elsewhere, but also to sell them here in China?
Well, I've got to tell you, Eunice, I listened to you all morning, and you've been incredibly spot on all these things. But when I listen to the rhetoric from China, this is 1968, 72 rhetoric.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's rhetoric that's really intense and aggressive. And eventually, I think we get a solution. Like, does anyone realistically think by the end of 2025, we're not going to get a deal done with China and the US? Like, I think by the end of April, we could get a deal done. If not, by the end of May. I don't think this thing lasts as long as people think it's going to. Right now, we have 145% tariffs on China. Like, that's just not sustainable. It's just not. Robinhood going back to the green right here at 44. And although Apple's now basically excluded from those 144% tariffs, Palantir right here 94.45, I really don't think they're going to last for that long. I just don't. And if it does, I guess you sell everything, right? Like like most stocks are not going to be able to. Every stock in some ways is impacted by China and their supply chain. Like even Palantir has a lot of customers that Palantir offers software for, but their software is to navigate supply chains that a lot of them are sourced in China. So from that perspective, I don't think there's any winners if we get into this massive trade war with China. There's a deal that has to be made, and eventually that deal should be made. Yeah, and at any moment we can get a tweet where they say, hey, negotiations are going really well. China's giving us this. We're going to give them this. Obviously, Trump's going to want to look like he's the winner here, so they're going to have to really get some good concessions. I do think getting rid of the iPhone from the reciprocal tariffs is not the best look for the United States, because it's basically saying, hey, we can't afford to have Apple tariffed as much as we thought we could let them be tariffed for, which China, sits back and says, yeah, we know. Like, obviously, you guys can't do that. So now it's a question of what can China give up? Like, how much can it hurt China for them to give a concession? Because we basically gave concession. We basically over the weekend conceded that laptops and iPhones, we cannot afford to be tariffed. And now it's up to China to show something they can't afford to deal with. But I don't know if we're going to get anything soon from them, or how long can they hold their breath. Bull is halted again. Just incredible, dude. $41.78, up 215%. Did anyone get into this name? Did anyone get into Webull? Did anyone buy this morning or on Friday? 41.78, dude. My goodness. $20 billion. It's worth almost half of Robinhood, and I don't think they have anywhere near the growth of Robinhood. So this is obviously meme speculation that's going on right now. But you can't buy puts on it. You can only ride it higher right now. You cannot short it. Well, technically, you could probably short it, but you can't buy puts. But there's more complex ways of shorting it. If there's even enough shares to borrow, what's the float? 471 million. Okay, 471 million. That's still a decent float. 500 million shares is out there. Robinhood going green, 43.77. Oracle right here, 135. That's up 2%. Grab of 1.85%. Let's talk a little bit about Grab for a second. So Grab had their acquisition today of a bank in Singapore. And it seems like a pretty well, it's not really a bank, it's a lending platform. So this is the acquisition news. So GSX Bank, which is one of the banks that they own, acquired Volatus Capital, a leading digital platform for Singapore small businesses. The deal will be fully funded with cash. With the acquisition, GSX will be able to tap Volatus's existing SME customer base to serve different types of business entities in order to engage in lending. So this was some really good analysis by Gab Growth. He has a great account on Twitter to learn about Grab. If you want to follow him, you can put the link right here. And he says, as of September 2024, Volatus was averaging 150 million in new loan dispersals per month, a run rate of 1.8 billion per year. In 2024, Grab dispersed 2.2 billion in loans. This essentially doubles the loans that were dispersed from Grab, if you combine Grab and Volatus together, which is really, really exciting. Now, here's another thing. The acquisition of Volatus, the chief operating officer, joined Grab in April 2024 after working at Volatus for 2 years in Jan 2022. So the same guy who joined the head of business banking at Grab a year ago was part of the company that they just acquired 2 years ago. Likely the reason they poached them was because they eventually wanted to make this acquisition. Now, Gab thinks that the acquisition likely, based on the numbers he is looking at, and again, you can see it on his count, the valuation would be from 180 million to 432 million. The midpoint would be about 300 million. So let's assume the acquisition was made around the 250 to 300 million dollar range. I think that's bullish. I think that's pretty bullish. For them to only spend 250 to 300 million dollars, which is about 5% of their cash. Grab has about 6 billion in cash. That gives them a lot of cash left to still be able to buy out GoTo, which I do think is going to happen by the end of the year. And this is the part of the business that matters the most, which is financial services. It's growing about 40%. It's almost profitable on an EBITDA basis. They said they're going to be profitable by the end of 2026. I think it's more likely by the end of this year, which would be a big surprise to the market. And then they're just doubling the amount of loans that they're going to be able to give out, which are high margin for Grab. So to me, the core part of the business that I really care about, that's growing the fastest, that has a population of 400 million people that don't have a bank account in Southeast Asia, is now getting a new asset to be able to continuously acquire more and more customers and scale, which I think is relatively bullish for Grab. Grab right here up 1.6%. MP is up 22% on the day. So the rare earth mineral stuff from China definitely being a catalyst for MP. Wow, look at Webull, unhalted, $45, $236 on Webull. It IPO'd at $10. Holy crap, dude. That's a big move on Webull. Arnie says, I can't even find Bull's investor relation page. Dude, I tried to find some of their financials of the weekend. I couldn't find it. Like I couldn't find it in the S1. I couldn't find it on any of the stock websites that are like have all the aggregated financials. So I tried to look at some of their numbers, but I couldn't really see it. And yeah, what's the investor page? Like if I type in Webull IR, nothing pops up on Google. Like where is the Webull investor relation? Let me tell you, Webull investor relations. Is this it? No, this is not it. If anyone has the link, please send it to me because I would like to see like where their press releases are and all that stuff. 44.79 right here on Webull. Up 235% right now. The S1, we are just starting the party at 7 a.m. in the Webull party. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they said. Again, they IPO'd at, I think, 3 billion. They're at 21 billion right now. So, I mean, they've done pretty damn well since IPO. Oh, Trump just tweeted. All right, here we go. Trump just tweeted. Okay, here we go. The war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. Okay. I just got here, and for 4 years during my term, I had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this war, but am working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was in so many ways, that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelensky and crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing the travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting, but that is the past. Now we have to get it to stop fast. We have to get it to stop and fast. So sad! Exclamation mark. Webull halted again at $48. This is just incredible, but Webull halted for the 5th time of the day. Okay, so Trump basically saying, hey, we need to finish the war between Russia and Ukraine and put an end to it. Again, he's referencing the 2020 election. This is stuff that people are, even his biggest supporters, don't want to hear about this stuff anymore, dude. Like, they don't want to hear about the election was rigged, all this stuff, but he's bringing it up again. Now, he is meeting with Russia and El Salvador and Iran this week. So he's meeting with a lot of countries this week. Most likely he's putting this tweet out because he's going to be talking with Putin pretty soon. And he's trying to get the media on his side to recognize that it's time for this war to end. Obviously, Zelensky probably wants it to end, but Zelensky wants it to end on favorable terms. And Trump knows that he might not be able to get those terms for Zelensky. So that's why the tension between the two have existed for, you know, realistically for the past couple of years. Obviously, we saw the blow up in the Oval Office. But that was the tweet from Trump currently right now. No tweets about tariffs or trade policy or anything like that. It's a lot of other political stuff that he is talking about this morning. All right, cool. Overall markets holding on. I mean, nothing too crazy. S&P is not really moving from that tweet. S&P still up 1.2% of the day, even though it is down from 2%. Webull continues to be halted. It looks like it looks like the Wall Street Bets folks are going to make this thing go even higher. I mean, they're going to treat it like Newsmax. If Newsmax got to 280, basically IPO'd at the same price, 10, 15 bucks as Webull. And Webull is like a more legit company than Newsmax, in my opinion, but I could see them pumping this one pretty aggressively. Apple right here, 205. That one's decline. It's a low of the day at 205, but still up 3.6%. At one point, it was at 212. Bitcoin, 84.5. Where's NVIDIA? NVIDIA, 112. NVIDIA barely holding on, but NVIDIA is up there. GameStop, is that green? GameStop is up 2%. Dude, everything has had a GameStop type of run this year outside of GameStop. Webull, Newsmax, WTF, like all these different names got the GameStop treatment, but GameStop didn't. Now, Ryan Cohen did buy 1.5 million shares of GameStop 2 weeks ago. So he has started more GameStop, which we haven't seen in the past couple of years. But the stock hasn't really reflected that currently right now. The good stuff is that it keeps help creating interest for stocks, which benefits Hood too. Yeah, that's the other thing. I did not expect Robinhood to be the #1 on the finance app store last week based on all this volatility. Like, you would think people are so afraid of the markets that they don't want to get into it. The more and more I do my own personal research about the nature of investing in markets, people more and more that don't care about stocks or investing are getting interested in the concept of investing. And we're seeing it in the media. We're seeing it in a lot of different industries that you would think would never care about investing. They're starting to care. And as a result, they're saying, hey, let's download an app that can introduce us to investing. And Webull, Robinhood, these are the main beneficiaries. Robinhood, obviously, I think has the best user experience. But the point is, more and more people are just like, I'm interested in what's going on in the economy and I want to trade it. And that's where Robinhood is getting a lot of benefits. So in the midst of the volatility, so that means Q1 is going to be good. Q2, that Tanner, Roy, and I were kind of worried about, is off to a good start because April, which is the beginning of Q2, has been really good in terms of the engagement that we've seen. So if this can continue for the next 2 months, then maybe Q2 can be very, very strong as well. Let's get another tariff update, and then we will keep going from there.
For some electronics, let's get over to Megan Casella, of course, because it is not as it all would appear. And Megan, perhaps you can explain to us what may be yet to come when it comes to these potential exemptions getting rolled back.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack here, David. So the tariff exemptions that the White House had repeatedly vowed would not be coming, of course, showed up this weekend. A handful of consumer goods, mostly technology, as you guys said, and as you can see on your screen here, all now exempt from the 125% so-called reciprocal tariff on imports from China. They are, though, still subject to the 20% tariff imposed over fentanyl concerns earlier in the term. But administration officials have spent 2 days now essentially saying not to read too much into these exemptions. Here's Kevin Hassett talking to reporters this morning.
Pretty much everything's going to be covered. The question is which law applies. And so if there's something that has a national security effect on things, and so if we buy it from some other country, then we might be unprepared in time of war if they were to turn off that thing, then that's going to be in a 232 bucket. But then we've got the reciprocal bucket, which is kind of most everything else.
So Hassett and other officials are doing a few things here. They are first trying to knock down any criticism that the president is backing down in his tariff fight by carving out these items. They're also highlighting that 20% tariff still applies, and they are emphasizing that more tariffs on these goods may still be coming. Remember, guys, we've talked about this, but certain goods were always excluded from the reciprocal tariffs. Copper, lumber, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals all on that list because the White House has long been looking at imposing national security tariffs under what's known as Section 232 on those items. Phones and computers were not initially on that list, but a White House official just this morning told me that they could now be lumped into the
Webull over 50. It was over 50. It was at 51. Now it's back at 47. We'll get back to this in a second. This thing should be halted again pretty soon, unless it comes down. 265%, $49 on Webull. Goodness gracious, dude. This thing is just like, it took a life of its own. Took a life of its own. I bet the Chinese hedge funds are probably, that's a good point, dude. That's a hell of a point. This is a Chinese stock at the end of the day, and you could have some Chinese investors across the entire world that could be trying to make it seem like it's more valuable than it's not. Again, we don't necessarily know if that's the case. I do think there's a very healthy Wall Street Bets population that's just going off with it, because that's what they did with Newsmax. And the ticker symbol is bull. I mean, come on, bro. Like, this is meant for Wall Street Bets. But there could definitely be some Chinese manipulation going on this stock right now. So there you go. Webull, I think it'll get halted again in another couple minutes, but it's up almost 300% on the day.
Conductor investigation, because phones and computers, of course, are downstream users of chips. Guys?
All right, Megan. So, yeah, do we have any sense as to where we stand then on phones or on servers or laptops, for example? And here the key names would be Apple and Dell and HP, all of which are up today. But, of course, there continue to be real questions as to what the ultimate tariffs will be on their products.
Absolutely. We're mostly in a holding pattern, a wait and see. When I spoke to this official, the sense that I got is that the White House is not looking at a separate investigation on those items. They would have to, for example, launch an investigation saying that iPhones are a threat to national security and then imposing tariffs specifically on iPhones or smartphones more broadly. That does not seem to be in the cards at this point. But what they are saying is that this broader 232 investigation, as it's called, into semiconductors could ultimately lump in some users of semiconductors, and that could include smartphones and laptops and other things that semiconductors are put into. It's not definite yet, but that's possible that that's an impact of that study. I'll also caution, though, that we're still a few steps away from this. The White House and the Commerce Department specifically will have to formally launch an investigation, notify Congress, likely have a public comment period, and then rule that they are imposing tariffs. So we're still a few steps away from that. But I will say I am told that even though the president has not signed an executive order formally launching that investigation yet, that the Commerce Department informally has sort of started the groundwork. So they could move quite quickly once that EO is signed.
Megan, I'm curious how we square some of these national security studies with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which the administration has used to unleash that blanket 10% tariff. How are those two things different? Is there overlap? How do we think about the authority here?
That's a great question. The main thing to know is that IEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, as you just said, that had before this term never been used to impose tariffs before. So this is something different. The Section 232, as it's known, national security investigation, the reason that they would go through this process, and as I just said, it's several steps and it takes a lot longer. The reason they would do that is because this administration believes that would set these tariffs more in stone. The IEPA tariffs potentially could be negotiated away. They can be legally challenged. They could be removed by the next president quite easily. They believe that going through Section 232 gives them more permanence. That's why they would go that route.
That's fair. The reciprocal tariffs are not done through Section 232 because obviously they'll be negotiated with. But the other ones that are sort of like a flat 10%, most likely are going that direction. Webull right here, 43.92. So it's not getting halted right now because it's not aggressively getting sold off yet or pumped anymore. It's kind of just flattish right here, but still up $30, 224%. On the day. S&P still up 1.3, Nvidia's up 1.2, GameStop's up 2.5, Apple 3.4, MSTR 3.2 on the day. All right, what did you guys say in the poll? 73% of you said you are not selling into the rip. 27% said yes. All right, so people are definitely trusting this market or some of this green. And again, I don't think it's crazy if we get a deal. Like, if you didn't sell at 4,800, do you sell at 5,400? I feel like if we're that close to a deal, like 4,800 it felt like it was so close to a bottom. 5,400, it feels like it's so close to a deal now, or at least some set of deals that we're going to get, that maybe it makes it seem less likely to want to pull the trigger. Also, I mean, we did get a headline from the Fed on Friday. One of the presidents said that we're willing to step in with QE if anything gets really bad. Kashkari said the opposite. He said we're not willing to do that. So I guess the market has to kind of interpret it how they do. But if things were to get that bad, I think the Fed would step in. But they're not going to step in until things really get bad. And I think Trump would acquiesce to the bond market before things get that bad, which is good, right? Because we don't want the Fed to pump that much money and turn this into a clown market. Like, that was 2020. We can't have that happen again. I mean, we can have it happen again. The harder the pump, the harder the fall as well. So I think we would want this to happen more naturally. Thoughts on NVIDIA Q1 earnings? I think everything's going to be good on Q1. I think they got it for what, 42 billion, 43 billion. They're probably going to do somewhere along the lines of 44.5 billion, in my opinion. I think gross margins will be in that low 70% range. They said it'll get back to 75 by the end of the year, so that won't be a surprise. I don't know what NVIDIA needs to say to get the market to be excited. Like, Jensen said everything he could possibly say about this is a revolution, this is happening, it's serious. Oh, by the way, Sam Altman mistakenly, well, not mistakenly, but so OpenAI has 500 million weekly active users, right? ChatGPT is growing like crazy. Like for the past couple of weeks, that's been the thing that Sam Altman's been talking about, that the growth is something he's never seen. He's been part of many startups before, but he's never seen growth like this. On his TED Talk, he was being interviewed, and the guy said, "How many users do you have?" The interviewer. And he said, "Oh, well, our last disclosed number was 500 million weekly actives." And the guy was like, "Well, wait a second. Backstage, you told me it doubled." And Sam was like, "I told you that in private for a reason." And then everyone started laughing. So essentially, if I'm not interpreting that wrong, they're at 1 billion. They went from 500 million to 1 billion in what seems like a month. And so, or if they're not literally at 1 billion, they're very close to 1 billion. So why am I bringing this up? Well, more queries, more reasoning, more compute, more NVIDIA. If ChatGPT ends up being a multi-billion user product, which Grok is not out there yet, Gemini is not out there yet, Claude is, they just don't have the user bases that ChatGPT has, then I mean, I would just imagine maybe that's the like narrative NVIDIA can talk about on the earnings, because they're not going to say anything that's new other than, hey, we need more compute. The reasoning models are getting more advanced. They can maybe talk about their Cosmos platform with robotic self-driving, et cetera. But one big argument is, hey, like the biggest large language model in the world is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are dependent on our GPUs. And maybe that's the argument they pitch to investors as well. Did we talk about Grab's acquisition? Yes, we talked about it. I think it's a very good acquisition. Makes a lot of sense. I'll talk about it more today on the daily recap when I publish that later today. So we'll go deeper into that. But yeah, very good acquisition. I think it's a great deal. It's not the go-to acquisition that the street wants to see, but it's one of the best acquisitions for the financial services sector. But yeah, in terms of NVIDIA's Q1, I think they're going to crush it. The multiple obviously is stupid given where the growth is. It's just up to the market to finally believe it at this point. Amit, watching you from Uzbekistan, even while on holiday, I can't help but join the market open. I love it. That is so cool. I've never been to Uzbekistan. That's so dope, though. I appreciate you watching, and thank you for being part of the show. Yeah, dude, if I ever take a holiday or vacation, I'm going to be checking the markets like I does. I wonder when the day of my life is going to come where I like don't look at the stock market. Like, not on a weekend. I mean, like on a real, like Monday through Friday. Will there ever be a day going into the future where I just don't look at the markets? I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I would have to sleep the whole day or something to not see it. Amit, have you looked into TTD? I haven't looked deep into them. They did get a little bit of pump over the past week, but they're down 60% for the year. I don't know, dude. This one, I'd rather just buy Google when it comes to ad tech. Again, I still have the same philosophy when looking at new stocks. Every one of them should be compared to the Mac 7, especially the cheap Mac 7s like Google, Meta, and NVIDIA, which are the cheapest in my opinion. Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon are a little bit more expensive than them. But like, is Trade Desk that asymmetric that it outperforms Google over the next year? Maybe. But it also has a lot of risks that Google just doesn't have. So I think you sleep better at night with Google. Be like Steve and don't look. Steve definitely looks. He maybe doesn't obsess and look at every candle tick, but he definitely looks. Yo, shout out to Arnie. He's going to vacation and he said he'll be following the market open. Arnie is going to be... Arnie, can I tell them where you're going? I think you said it publicly already, but Arnie is going to a new location where his money is going to be worth a lot more than what it's worth in Italy. And he's going to be living like a king. He's going to be living like an absolute freaking king. Amit, I've made $17,000 so far off Webull. Do I sell now? Okay, so I have a follow-up question. What price did you buy Webull at? Again, not financial advice, but if I'm up 20 grand on a pump 300% in a day, I personally would not get greedy. I would not get greedy. I just went like $17,000 is real money, bro. If you bought this thing at $40 and it's at 48 and you're up 17 grand, you bought it at 30 and you're up like, if I was me, I would take the $17,000. That's a lot of money. Maybe that 17 could turn into like 80,000 because Webull goes to 200, whatever. But like, you're not going to be upset with 20 grand. I don't think you would be upset. Yeah, 20. You got in at 22. It's at 47. Yeah, I mean, look, eventually you got to make your own decision, but 17 grand is good money, bro. 17 grand is good money. If that was me, I would take the money. I would take the money. Like, because I would have to really believe this thing can keep pumping, and it can. Like, don't get me wrong, this thing could. I mean, Newsmax went to 280, but Newsmax is now at 23. So at some point, musical chairs will stop. And the question is just, will you be getting out when it's at 80, getting out at 40, or getting back out when it's 22? So, I mean, 17 grand is good money. So I wouldn't mind taking that. Okay, a couple of you got the location Arnie's going to in the chat. Arnie, you can comment it if you want. A couple of you guys got it though. Arnie said, "I'm just curious if someone spots it." Yeah, a couple of you guys got it. But his euros will be worth a lot more in that location. Amidst paper handing. Dude, I don't care. $17,000, bro. Like, in what world is $17,000 not a lot of money? Especially if it's profit. It's not just paper. It's in your P&L. 17 grand. And for what? For freaking just betting on a meme stock? Like, that's some of the easiest money you're gonna make in the markets. Especially if you're lucky enough to get in. Like, also Webull at 22 already pumped. Like, that's the impressive thing. Webull already pumped from 13 to 22. So even buying at 22, you were taking a risk. And now you got 41. It's like, all right, maybe you take that off the table. It's not Dubai. I can confirm he's not going to Dubai. He's not going to Dubai. But he's going to be having fun. He's going to try to do Palantir. He might not be able to do Palantir weekly for the next couple of weeks, but he will be having fun. S&P right there up 1.6. Wow, S&P's making a little recovery here, dude. It was almost below 1%. Now it's at 1.6. So bull market's holding on. Grabs up 2.2. Nvidia's up 1.6. GameStop's up 2. Hoodie back to 44. Starting to see a little bit more momentum here. When Austin meetup. So Houston is happening in May. I think Austin will happen the same week. So most likely May. I think we might not be able to do Dallas that week because 3 places might just be too much. But Austin and Houston, I think for sure, and then Dallas will happen another time. But most of you guys have told me you're in Houston, so Houston seems to be the main spot to do the meetup for. Where's the 10-year? 10-year is dropping, not as aggressively, but it's dropping, which is good. At least it's not going higher. That's the most important thing. And if we can get that below 4 or like closer to 4.1, 4.2, that would be amazing. Boston, yeah, we got to figure out Boston, dude. There's like, Boston is just, I don't think there's that many people in Boston, so it might not be worth doing it. But maybe towards the end of the year. But I want to do Boston. I've been to Boston many times. I just don't think there's that many people that are in Boston. So maybe I'll do a poll and see how many of you guys are in Boston. But if so, then for the summer, Boston is perfect. It's probably really cold in Boston right now, right? It's getting a little bit warmer in the Northeast, but Boston uniquely is very, very cold. Where was the last NYC meetup? It was in a Bitcoin bar. It was called PubKey. It was a Bitcoin bar in New York City. And it was dope. It was super. And we had the whole back of the bar was like, wow, Webull 53. All right, bro. If you sold and captured the 17K, you could have been up 25K. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. Put in the chat if you sold though. I think everyone's curious now. I think your name was Jerry. Jerry, put in the chat. Jerry, bull at 54. Fuck me. Oh my gosh. Well, this is why you don't listen to YouTubers, right? This is Goodness gracious, dude. If it's any reprieve, I would have sold way before 17K. If I was up like 7K, I would have sold. If I was up like 3K, I would have sold, dude. So even your risk tolerance is much higher than most people. But you can't be mad, dude. 17K. It's a lot of money. I sold half. Okay, cool. That's cool. So you still have half left. You'll let half ride. That's not horrible. Dude, that's why. It is one of my dreams to get into a meme stock. And Jerry, you lived one of my dreams today. I have never been able to get into an IPO or a meme stock and ride that sucker up. Like, has anyone ever done that? Has anyone, have you guys got into a stock at 10 and it goes to 70 in a day? Like, how many people can say they've done that? I've never done that, ever. And like, I feel like before I die, I should have that experience in the markets. Now, granted, trying to chase that experience will make me lose a lot of money, which is why I haven't chased that experience. But I've really never had that moment where you buy in and it just goes crazy in a day. I feel like it's a lot of luck, right place, right timing. Like, your risk tolerance really has to be there. I didn't experience that in 2020 at all. Ray says I've been riding VG down. Yeah, I've rode up plenty of stocks down. For some reason, I've had that experience many times in life. VG up 4% right here. Nvidia's up 1.7. Got into GameStop at $3, bro. Holy crap. Dude, I really never had that experience. Have you understood where a bull social movement is? I don't see it on Wall Street Bets. That's a good point, Arnie. Over the weekend, I tried to see if Wall Street Bets was talking about it, and they're not. I'm assuming the people trading it are Wall Street Bets type of people. Weibo back from 55 to 48, but they're not there's not a ton of posts about it, which leads me to believe there could be an argument around that China hedge fund manipulation for this. But I still do think the people that are trading this right now are Wall Street Bets type of people. Discord IPO is going to be juicy. Yeah, that's fair. And especially if the IPO market's going to open up. Shout out to Code Strap in the chat, Palantir OG. Amit, remember like 2 years ago when we talked about how Nato would adopt Palantir? I do remember that, Code Strap. I remember that very explicitly. In fact, do I have the clip right here? Yep, I got the clip. Got the clip, baby. Here we go. This was Code Strap in the depths of 2022. $6 predicting the NATO contract that we got today.
Governments, go like the government spending goes up and down.
By the way, shout out to the beard. Maybe it needs to make a comeback. Shout out to the beard.
The thing that I'm most impressed with is their role in the war in Ukraine. And if I'm reading between the lines correctly, don't worry about the government spending, because in my opinion, they're $100 billion company on government spending alone. If what happened in Ukraine is reflective of reality.
Palantir now is over $200 billion. I mean, shout out to Code, bro. Shout out to freaking Code Strap.
If it is, a NATO with that power in their hands is undefeatable. Period.
Really?
Yeah.
100%. And do you think they could sell to NATO?
They don't need to sell to NATO. NATO will be begging them for that technology. If it's doing what they're implying it's doing in Ukraine, yeah. 1,000% fucking percent. Go look at why the Russians T-72 is getting blown up and absolutely eviscerated. You know what the number one thing you got to do in a ground war is? Stop the fucking armor. You have to stop the armor. That shit will run through your cities like you weren't even there. You know what a tank does to fucking infantrymen? Like, I don't think you guys understand. You have to stop the armor. If you stop the armor, you have a chance. You can dig in. You can fight a prolonged air war. You can survive the artillery. If you don't stop the armor, you're fucked. What did they?
Pretty incredible, dude. I'll put that video right here in the chat if anyone wants to see it. But I mean, I said, hey, do you think they could sell to NATO? And he says NATO will be begging for Palantir. It's kind of wild, right? I mean, and this is why Palantir delivered so much alpha to so many people that are here, because we have people like CodeStrap, like Sachin, so many different people from different walks of life that were able to put out a thesis on where this story was going to end up. I'm going to post that video on Twitter. That's a good video to remind people of just like how much we were theorizing about this back in the day. And I couldn't do it alone, right? I couldn't come up with, I didn't know that NATO would be begging for, but CodeStrap has a lot more experience with this stuff. He's looked at it. He understands a lot more about history. So he could come up with a conclusion that, hey, there is a world in which NATO will easily be getting the software from Palantir because they desperately need it. And based on today's announcement, That's what we're seeing right now. Robinhood right here, 44.42. That's up 1.6. Bitcoin getting some legs behind it. Bitcoin moving. Palantir as well, 95.80, back up 8%, getting a little bit of look at NVIDIA, almost 2%. Looks like a 1030 slam turned into a 1040 reversal today. Grab as well up 2%. S&P trying to go back up 2%. But we're starting to see a little bit more movement across the entire market. Amit, what's your next Palantir? We talked about this on Palantir Weekly. No one has the answer to this. We've been waiting and searching for this answer for so long. And the conclusion is Palantir is the next Palantir. That's it, dude. It's really freaking hard to find the next. I was talking about this with another friend of mine the other day, and he got into Palantir back at $7 as well. And his argument was like, everyone who keeps trying to find the next Palantir, it's very difficult to find a stock that has all the characteristics that Palantir had. Incredible leadership, unique leadership that quite frankly doesn't give a you-know-what about what anyone says. They're just ready to go do it, which is emblematic of Alex Karp. Diversified use cases of their software, passionate retail community, people that want to see the company win, mission-oriented, a churn rate on their employees that's less than 10% because people actually want to stay there for decades and dedicate their life to Palantir. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on of so many different variables that we discovered in 2022 about Palantir. As CodeStrip says right there, companies like Palantir are rare. They're just so freaking rare to find. They really are. The closest I've gotten is Robinhood, and Robinhood doesn't really have the TAM of Palantir, but Robinhood has an exceptional founder, and they innovate like crazy. And there's a lot more components of the Palantir story, but that's the best I can relate Robinhood to. They have an amazing founder, and they innovate. But Robinhood doesn't have Palantir's TAM. Palantir's TAM is in the trillions. Robinhood's TAM, I think, is more so in the many, many hundreds of billions. And if they keep getting into different verticals, they can get into the trillions. But Palantir's TAM is just a different level. And it's a reoccurring software. Like if the market tanks, Robinhood tanks. If the market tanks, Palantir is trying to get a high multiple so it could tank. But Palantir, you could argue, is going to be more valuable to companies when things are incredibly volatile, which is what we're seeing in terms of what's going on with tariffs. So I don't know. I think Palantir is one of a kind. And sometimes getting into a really good name, even if it's more expensive, is better than trying to find a cheap name. One thing I will say, though, Arnie says generational companies are rare for a reason. One thing I will say is if Arnie and I agree on a company again, don't fade that pick. We were making fun of Amir the other day. We have a group chat with all three of us, and Amir is now like super bullish Robinhood. Like he's like, Amir's always been bullish Palantir, but now finally he's getting into Robinhood at like $35-$40. And me and Arnie told him at $8. Like we were in that group chat every day. We were like, dude, it's Hood. It's Hood. It's Hood. It's cheap. It's cheap. And he just kept rejecting it. And now finally he's into Hood. And we were making fun of him. We were like, hey, you faded an Arnie and a Amit pick. So far, we're 2 for 2, Palantir and Hood. It's like you can't fade an Arnie, because when Arnie and I both agree on a thesis, there's like real potential. And I wish Arnie would get on the Grab bandwagon, but he's not there yet. He's not there yet. Arnie's not getting on Grab with me. He doesn't see the vision yet, which is fine. That's okay. Maybe one day we'll get him on there. But if Arnie was with me on Grab, I think I would be even heavier on Grab. So I'd be like, all right, I got Arnie with me. But I don't have them there yet. But even Arnie and I privately, we've been trying to find like, what is our next Hood? What is our next Palantir? Because those two have worked very well. And it's interesting because like Arnie's thesis and my thesis were different on both of companies, but they were symbiotic. So Arnie's thesis on Hood was very simple. Asset vortex. That was his argument. His argument was like, Robin is just going to suck up all the assets in the world and they're going to become one of the biggest financial institutions. My thesis was, I use the product every day, right? Arnie's in Italy, so he doesn't use the product every day. So my daily experience with it is UI, UX is an incredible moat. And then it was 8 billion market cap, 6 billion in cash, which Arnie also was like, yeah, that's stupid. And so that's what led to Hood being what it is. Now, I don't think any of us expected Hood to go from 8 to 65 at one point. Like we really didn't expect that, but it happened. And now we expect Hood to get a minimum to $100 over the next couple of years, especially with S&P inclusion, as long as they keep executing. So that was our 2 picks, but we don't have the 3rd pick yet. We don't have the 3rd pick yet. Thoughts on Reddit? I like Reddit, but I do think I do think that it got very expensive during the middle of the year, or February, when it got up to $250. It's not as expensive now, but still trading at a 15 times price to sales. Unless you're like super long on the generational aspect of what Reddit can do when it comes to AI, I think you are paying a decent multiple for some of their growth. They are profitable though, which is good. So I don't hate Reddit here, but I do think it got very expensive in February. Are you on the APO bandwagon? I'm not. So that's interesting, right? I have like Grab, which is one of my main picks. Arnie's big in Apollo, which is a private equity, not a private equity. It's a global management firm around lots of different financial. I guess you could call it a financial services institution is the best way to call it. I like his thesis. I'm just like not super like, yes, Apollo, you know, and he likes my Grab thesis, but he's not like super yes Grab. So we haven't fully come to that third name that we're both like, yep, this is the name. And when we do, we'll let everybody know. But as of now, we don't have that yet. 11 o'clock NY Fed 1-year consumer inflation expectations. This is also important. Yeah, kind of. I don't know if it's really going to move the markets. The Michigan consumer sentiment was what was important last week, and we got that data. But yeah, you're right. 11 a.m. we get consumer inflation. The market's expecting consumers are going to say 3.3%. Previous was 3.1. So in about 13 minutes, we'll see what it comes out to be. If that's below 3%, that would be incredible, especially after this PPI. But then, then it begs the question, who do they survey? Weeble, by the way, 45, back down from 55. If they surveyed heavily leaning Democrats, then maybe that's a little bit skewed. Republicans is skewed. So that's why the soft data surveys aren't like, I think, the most influential in this market right now. You and Arnie are both bullish on Tesla. Yeah, but Tesla's already discovered, right? Tesla's not an undiscovered company. Like Hood at $8, no one cared about it. Palantir at 6.7, we had a community that cared about it, but Wall Street didn't care about it. Hood was funny at $8, bro. Literally no one cared. Like it was actually, like at least with Palantir, you got a big, there was no Hood community. Like the beautiful thing about, that's another thing about Palantir that I think is not replicatable. The Palantir community started when it was down 80%. The Hood community realistically started after the pump, right? Like after it got to, I would say at least $30. That's when there was a Hood community that was really forming. But in Palantir, what's so special is thousands of people across the world, when the stock was in the gutter, decided to be part of the community and contribute whatever crowdsourced due diligence they could contribute to the community, whether it was through videos, articles, podcasts, tweets, whatever it may be. And that's special because it's just not easy to find a story like that again. Here's a chart by Goldman Sachs. Take a look at this. S&P's up 485% for the past 25 years. Gold is up 1,000%. Talk about some outperformance, dude, by gold. I mean, you could have taken a risk and bet on the best companies in the world in America, or you could have just bought gold. Like it's really a lot of the surge is coming over the past couple of years, given all the volatility in the markets, but still gold beating the S&P. I mean, think about all the risks you're taking with investing in the S&P, right? It's like you're betting on companies, you have to deal with recessions. Yeah. It's like gold just continues going through, which is pretty incredible. Oh, Trump's going to be live at 11. Okay, I think we'll stream it. It's probably not going to start exactly at 11, but we'll stream it. Trump's going to be meeting with the El Salvador president at 11. So basically in 10 minutes. You know, I was doing some research on the El Salvador guy, Nayib Bukele, this weekend. And very interesting things I found out. I found out he calls himself the world's coolest dictator, which is interesting in and of itself. I also found out that he has reduced gang violence severely in El Salvador, which is why even though he calls himself a dictator and in many ways acts like a dictator, S&P 500 almost up 2%, he got 85% of the vote in the last election because people are really happy that gang violence is slowing down in El Salvador. So, at some level, if you can appease people's physical safety, you're going to get their support. The question is just going to be how long he stays into power. Also, he's big on Bitcoin. I mean, El Salvador was one of the first countries that recognized Bitcoin as legal tender. So the Bitcoin bros definitely are a fan of him. 85,756 on Bitcoin. S&P really moving now, dude. It's trying to get it basically at new highs of the day. 543, 544 it hit in the pre-markets. NVIDIA right here up 1.4. And then Apple fading a little bit, but still up about 3.8% currently right now. I don't see him as a dictator. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't. I watched a couple of videos over the weekend to get a better understanding of him because Trump did say he was talking to him this week. And there's a lot of people that see him as like a savior in Salvador. But there's also a lot of people that feel he is using the military to persuade the forces in the parliament to be able to stay in power. So there's a lot of mixed opinions on the guy. But Trump likes him, and he likes Trump. And he also was not a fan of Harris. And not just because he likes Trump, but more so. There's a podcast he did with Tucker Carlson I listened to a couple months ago. And it was about the fabric of Western values and democracy crippling if we don't protect free speech and all those kind of core elements that that are emblematic of Western values. So it's like he's a fan of that stuff, but also to some respects, you know, he still operates as a dictator. So there's a lot of nuance to this guy in particular. Let's hear from Ed Yardeni before we have Trump go live. We'll get the consumer inflation expectations in just 8 minutes. Here's what Yardeni had to say. Again, he took down his S&P 500 target from 7,000 to 1,000. Let's get his thoughts on if he might have to increase that target anytime soon.
Closer look ahead of the first trading short end, but in a nutshell, are you still worried about the action here with 444 or so on the 10-year?
Well, I think some of the volatility is obviously of a concern. The level doesn't particularly bother me. 4.5% is kind of where the bond yield should be. It's normalized. We've been looking for 4.5% plus minus 25 basis points for this year. And it's been down a little bit below that, but now it's back exactly where we think it should be.
It's weird because there's so many problems to talk about, but at the same time, I always think of you as someone who comes in and says, you know, calm down, and you know, markets go up in the long run. And like Joe said, we were at what, 3,600? Was this 3,600?
We were worried. Mike Wilson's worst case scenario was 3,000. This
couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And here we are now. So all of the following, I just want to preface with that. That said, you've written about, you know, what's going on with the fiscal deficits and just how bad they are.
Sure.
And if we can't solve that, we're not going to solve anything on the trade. And your note this morning on Taiwan, I mean, just saying that, look, if the president's using his bullets now, which he's threatened to use if they were to take, we're already in the middle of this trade war, and now we're backing down from it. If you're the Chinese, are you going, yeah, what are they going to do? Anyway, so those are all the worry spots.
Yeah, there's plenty of things to worry about, but the market is actually holding up pretty well. I mean, we're still basically in correction territory. We got very close to bear market for the S&P 500. The NASDAQ got into a bear market for what, a few days, and now we're back in correction territory. I think we probably made the low in this sell-off on April 8th, right before the April 9th shot to the upside. I think it's hard to really short the market from here when you never know what the president's going to back off on next, what he's going to pivot on next. And the market has shown a willingness to go up on just minor promises of a 90-day postponement. So I think that's helpful. And look, I think the data still show that the consumer is spending. You know, Americans are great. When we're happy, we spend money. When we're depressed, sometimes we spend more. As long as there's a wherewithal, and the initial claims data show that the labor market's hanging in there remarkably well. And you don't see employers just saying, you know, you're fired because of these tariffs.
Yeah, but so it looks like what happened was and is a sentiment shock, and maybe a political shock that you think Washington is responding to, because otherwise they could look at the hard data like you're talking about and say full steam ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the soft data is soft for sure. The consumer sentiment is extremely weak. I'm not a big fan of the consumer sentiment survey. It's very twitchy. It's right now that it's mostly being driven by inflation expectations. In the past, those inflation expectations were driven by the price of gasoline, and here they just soared to like 6%. And you know, you go by
gas is lower.
Fill up, gas is actually lower. I think people are missing the fact that we actually are getting some stimulus here from lower energy prices. So all in all, I think the consumer is going to continue to spend. I don't think we're going to see a big increase in unemployment. Maybe we're going to slow down on hiring because of tariff uncertainty. But I think businesses are going to hoard labor because labor is still in short supply.
Yeah.
Trump just tweeted the NVIDIA news. He put a link to the NVIDIA press release. NVIDIA to manufacture American-made AI supercomputers in the U.S. for the first time. I don't think it's going to go live literally in 5 minutes. It'll probably be at like 11:15. But I would imagine he's going to talk about this NVIDIA announcement, given that he just tweeted it right now.
Especially skilled labor. And I think productivity has been making a big comeback. I think it's stalling out here, but I think it will continue to make a comeback over the rest of the decade.
So do we need to worry about the fiscal situation?
Well, I've been doing this for over 45 years, and I got a bunch of books on my bookshelf back from the 80s and 90s about living beyond our means and the debt bomb and all these. And meanwhile, we're, as you said, look where we are compared to all the doom and gloom that was out there. My attitude is I'll worry about the deficit when the bond market worries about it. And I guess arguably you could say there was certainly a concern last week, but again, look at the level. And the other thing is Janet Yellen, you asked Janet Yellen about the bills. She was very clever on November 1st. She said, hey, to the bond vigilante, she said, you don't like my bonds and notes? Take my bills. And the thing about it is, if the Treasury issues more bills and reduces the supply of bonds and notes, I don't think that the deficit is a problem financing it at all. And as a matter of fact, it forces the Fed to buy those treasuries. So instead of the bond vigilantes being the control on inflation, it's all going to be all up to the Fed if they do more and more treasury bills. And I think that's probably where Besant's going to go next.
And obviously getting yields to come down would be easier for them to have these auctions. But, they got to get yields to come down, which means we got to have less uncertainty in the current environment. Let me log into Truth Social on my computer, because every time I log in, do I even remember my password, dude? Hold on, let me see. I'm just gonna make a new account so I can just show you the tweets here, because I always use it on my phone. Create account. Let's just create an account real quick. Okay, so phone number. Let's see. That way we can get updates immediately right here. NVIDIA's not really moving off the Trump tweet, though. But I do think he'll be talking about it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see NVIDIA get completely taken out of the tariffs, dude. I mean, if this is what they're doing, I think this is what he wanted them to do, right? So maybe there's a world where they don't have to deal with it as much as other people did. Again, if you want to get Trump updates, he doesn't post on Twitter. He posts on, he posts more on Truth Social than anything. Powell needs to lower rates. I agree. And we'll get consumer sentiment in about 2 minutes. I'm on the train. I think Powell should lower rates now. Like now with CPI, PPI coming in the way that it is. And the reason I'm on the train is because if I think the tariffs are going to be walked back, then yes, I think it's time to cut rates. Because inflation expectations should go down. But if we have even more aggressive tariffs, then we're not going to be able to cut rates. But if we do, then yes, there's no point of the Fed's funds rate being double what we have in the context of headline CPI. Why isn't it letting me make an account? This is being stupid. Every time I try to make an account, it says no. I'm going to try to use a different email. Let's see. Meta's red. Meta is... Dude, I've been really wanting to start a position in Meta. Oh, we didn't even talk about the Meta trial, dude. I forgot. That was a big headline as well. All right, so let's get these consumer inflation numbers, then we'll talk about the Meta trial. That's probably why it's red, because everyone's afraid they're going to break up WhatsApp and Instagram. All right, here we go. Consumer inflation expectations. We should be getting that any second. Let's see. 3.3 is the headline. That's what the market's expecting. Let's see. Romeo says, be honest, it's because you have TLT. No, but in general, it's not even because of TLT. It's just like, if CPI is at 2.4 and the Fed's funds rate is at 4.5, what are we doing? Like, we don't need to be that restrictive. So like, to me, I'm just like, it's obvious at this point. But I also understand if Jay Powell thinks the tariffs are super inflationary, then we're not going to get the cut. Like, he's just, no matter what we think, he's not going to give it to us if he thinks tariffs are going to get inflation back to 3%. Okay, this number is not loading. It should be out. It's 3.6. Is it 3.6? It is. Let me see. Trading economics is really slow, dude. Are we dumping? We're dumping. Let me. Oh, 3.6. Yeah, you're right. 3.6. 3.6. 3.6. Are we dumping on that? This is a stupid reason to dump, but probably will create a dump. S&P. No, not really. Not really dumping. No, we got a green candle. No, we're fine. I don't even know how important this survey is. It's not as important as Michigan, from my understanding. So I doubt this is that big. I mean, maybe it is. I'll try to get some more coverage on it. Not really creating a dump right here, though. Yeah, it's a red candle, but it's not. It's not aggressive. It's not like Michigan last week. Last week, Michigan was down almost like 0.7%. 3.6. All right, 3.6. That's what we got. Here's a little bit of coverage on this. Let's try to get some more details. I will switch to Trump once he goes live with Naib, but he's not live yet.
Hey, Carl. So the president's ever-changing tariff policies are playing a little havoc here with the effort to measure inflation expectations among the public. The New York Fed, their survey of consumer expectations out with the much followed inflation expectations up 0.5 point on the 1 year, unchanged on the 3 year, and 2.9 down a tick on the 5 year. But don't get too excited because this survey was conducted before the April 2nd so-called Liberation Day. You can see there it's March 1 through the 31st. The New York Fed also saying that price expectations for food surging higher along with medical care and expectations for rent increases. Expectations for gas increases fell. And this is worrisome here, the probability of a higher unemployment rate jumping 4.4% to 44%. That's the highest since April 2020. So there is some concern out there about jobs. Now, here's the last week's University of Michigan survey conducted after the April 2nd tariffs, but before the April 9th repeal. So not all entirely clear. You can see they surged a lot. New York Fed and the New Michigan, they're pretty close. They usually run together. Unclear how this survey would have looked after that April 2nd Liberation Day. Guys?
Steve, do we expect consumers, survey respondents to keep track with this ongoing change and get that reflected in these surveys?
I think that's a joke question, but it's a real important question, Carl. It's funny, but it's not because, well, first of all, I have been rather amazed that from the very beginning of this tariff discussion, it does appear to be permeating and well recognized by the public just what's going on here. A lot of times, these financial issues do not resonate with the public. This one does, and it may be because of the recent inflation run we've had, that inflation remains high. And so they do seem to be paying attention to this, whether or not the April 2nd, the April 9th, and these things end up shaping expectations, I don't know. But there is, for the moment, an important difference between the 5-year outlook at the New York Fed and the 5-year outlook at Michigan. If that 4.5, you can put that chart up again, if that number remains, that's going to be of concern to the Federal Reserve, that long-term inflation expectations have deteriorated to the point that they're quite as high, 6.7%, just 3% or 2.9 for the New York Fed. So we have to watch this. And honestly, Carl, your question is probably the most important question that the Fed is asking itself, not only now, but over time, whether or not these inflation expectations become, in the term of art, unanchored.
Yeah. Steve.
All right, the market doesn't care that much, bro. The market doesn't care that much. Again, even if these questions were asked before the April 2nd tariff stuff, all of that has been walked back pretty aggressively outside of China, right? We're not having those crazy reciprocal tariffs anymore because of the 90-day pause. So from that angle, yeah, it'll probably influence some of the perception that consumers have, but I don't think it's going to be the end-all be-all for these expectations. I care about the real data, and the real data on CPI and PPI is better than what I think most people could have asked for. So now it's just a question to see if that continues to hold up. Let's talk about Meta. So I want to talk about this Meta trial and kind of see what we're going from. Actually, here, let's Lena Khan was on today. Let's get her perspective, former FTC chair, in terms of why she thinks that we need to have potentially a shakeup with Meta. Trump's not live yet. I will go live to him as soon as he's live, probably in like the next 15, 20 minutes. But let's dive deeper into what's going on with the Meta story.
The Squawk Box this morning, the trial between Meta and the Federal Trade Commission kicking off today. At stake is the potential of a divestment of Instagram and WhatsApp from the tech giant, breaking it up effectively. Join us right now. First on CNBC is...
Which, by the way, would be insane. If there's no Instagram or WhatsApp, like the thesis on Meta is like that would be insanity, dude. Like, so that is probably why the stock is having an overhang right now and now pumping with the NASDAQ, because you just can't take away Instagram and WhatsApp.
Former FTC chair Lena Khan, it is great to see you. This case, in many ways, preceded you. It was actually brought originally by the Trump administration, but then was thrown out while you were on the job, and then you refiled it.
That's right. I joined the FTC in June 2021, and within a few weeks, the judge had tossed out the case the Trump administration had filed. We fixed it, refiled it, it survived, and it's taken 4 years to get here.
Are you surprised that this case is here? Which is to say that one of the things we've seen over the last couple of months is that Mark Zuckerberg has made a very aggressive effort to get closer to this president. He's been very supportive of this president. There had been some speculation that behind the scenes he was pushing for either some kind of settlement or for the case effectively to get withdrawn.
I'm glad to see that it's gotten to this point and that the various efforts by Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg to make the case go away on the eve of trial were not successful.
Do you believe that there's a settlement that could be reached while the case is ongoing? I mean, that's always a possibility.
I mean, that's always a possibility generally, but, once it's taken 4 years to get to trial, by that point, the parties have usually exhausted any efforts to get to settlement. Of course, with this administration, when we continue to see executives walk into the Oval Office seeking special favors, until the trial is over and until we actually get a liability verdict and then a remedy, we're all going to have to wait and see.
What do you think of the argument that this is a case that is in the rearview mirror, that this is a mistake of a case, and that the world has changed so much and has gone so far in the last decade, effectively, when so many of these deals were made, that we're now looking at TikTok as a competitor,
I'm really curious about her answer here, because I think the question has the right premise. Like when Meta bought Instagram in 2012 and WhatsApp in 2014, the world was different. Now you've got a much more globalized society that literally depend on these products, not only for business, but for communication. And so to break that up, I'm very curious, what is Lena Khan's argument for why, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to break up a product that has 5 billion people using it every single day?
Other players in this universe that didn't exist even 5 years ago.
Yeah, and this is something that's going to come up as part of the case, as part of the FTC's argument that Facebook has illegally monopolized. And you have to remember that Facebook had actually done well for itself in the desktop market. But it was actually as smartphones were taking on that Facebook struggled to innovate and make that transition. And that's the moment at which it panicked. It saw companies like Instagram and WhatsApp experiencing astronomical growth. And that's the point at which it resorted to this buy or bury scheme.
This has got to be ridiculous, bro. This has got to. Her argument is a company realized that they weren't growing that much in a new vertical. So they decided to buy other companies to help them grow. That's the argument. That's bad. And Instagram willingly selling for $1 billion is bad because they want it to be part of Meta. Like, that's bad for company. Like, Meta has returned a lot of shareholder value because of these acquisitions. That's bad. Like, they want to grow. They want to get companies to help them grow. And they weren't in 2012 when Meta bought them, they had just gone public. They weren't a $2 trillion company. I think they were barely a $100 billion company. So the idea that they made an acquisition when they were significantly smaller than they were today, and that was illegal, is just a weird argument to me.
Where if it couldn't outcompete a rival, it either bought them out or would cut them off its network. And this case is really about making sure we have free and fair competition so that innovators can succeed.
I'm not going to dissuade you from those arguments, but I'm going to suggest to you for a moment that in a world of AI, where all of a sudden OpenAI and ChatGPT, which basically didn't exist at the time, Gemini didn't exist, Anthropic, all of these things, X in its current formation, again, TikTok, these are things that weren't even on the table at the time. And so how can we look back at a deal that was made, as I said, years and years ago, and suggest that they should be broken up today?
Well, look, there's no, expiration date when it comes to the illegality of a transaction. I think there is a way in which the entire social networking ecosystem looks different today because Facebook was permitted to go out and make these acquisitions, degraded its service for users, locked out other potential entrants. And now we're seeing a similar dynamic with AI, right? I mean, I think one set of lessons from Web 2.0 is that when you have these lumbering monopolists with bureaucracy and bloat, they're not the best position to innovate. And that's why we saw them engage in illegal
But what do you make of the argument that they actually, this is now Meta today, and that you actually probably want to root for a Meta in the AI game because you have ChatGPT, you have Google, you have Anthropic. These guys are doing an open source version of it all, and that actually makes a more competitive environment.
I mean, we're going to have to keep looking closely at what's happening in AI. Obviously, the DeepSeek moment was a wake-up call for a lot of the American companies and made clear that you really do want firms to be competing to make sure we're getting the best services, but also that they have an incentive to efficiently create these products,
What do you think
right?
of the idea of national champions, though, right now? Because that's the other big piece of this debate as we're looking at tariffs. And we're looking at TikTok and whether TikTok is now going to be some kind of chess piece in a larger tariff negotiation. How do you think about that relative to a Meta? That's something that Meta would say, how is it possible that we're thinking about allowing TikTok into the United States at a time where we're also trying to effectively sue Meta out of existence?
Yeah, look, this national champions argument gets made over and over again. But in the United States, we have committed to a system of open markets and free enterprise. And that has served us extraordinarily well, right? Contributing to untold levels of innovation and growth. And the last thing we should want is to replace that system of open markets for a system that is more or less centrally planned by monopolists and a handful of gatekeepers.
Yeah, I just disagree, dude. I disagree. Trump's not live, by the way. I think probably in like 5 minutes, but he's not live yet. It might be longer, though. I mean, you never know. These things kind of take some time before they officially get in the White House, get set up in the Oval Office, all that stuff. But I just disagree. I think that when Meta bought Instagram and WhatsApp, they were not the companies that they were today. I mean, let's just look at the stock, right? So Meta in 2012, I don't know the exact date, or it was June 2012. So June 2012, the stock price was $38. Stock's at $538 today. Okay, so like more than a 10x is what we've seen since then. That's when they bought Instagram for $1 billion. Then 2014, Meta, I think that was summer of 2014. The stock was $75. I mean, like it's not like this was a many trillion-dollar company that had all this power. Like Meta was growing, but now it's a behemoth. It was not a behemoth 15 years ago. It was in the early stages of trying to become a behemoth, but that's the American dream, is like, can you keep growing to inevitably get that big? So when they bought Instagram and WhatsApp, like her first argument about, Meta was good in the desktop, but they realized they sucked at mobile. Like, yeah, that's the point. Companies suck at a lot of things and they need help. And that's why they buy other companies. Robinhood didn't have a credit card, so they bought X1. Like they could have built their own credit card, but was it anti-competitive for them to buy another credit card company? Like, no, it helped them expand and grow, and it delivered shareholder value, which I took profits on with my options, and I had to pay capital gains taxes. Like all of that money eventually comes back, but you need to have that innovation flowing in a meaningful way. By the way, those VCs that invested in the company that Robinhood bought out for their credit card, they got a return because Robinhood was their exit liquidity. Now they're more incentivized to invest in other startups because they realize that the system works. They can invest in a company at $5 million. It can get bought out for $100 million. They can make money, and then they can go put it into the next startup to be able to continue the flurry of innovation and capitalism. Are there issues with antitrust? Obviously. There's obviously incredibly anti-competitive practices that some companies engage in. And the big tech is of course, like Apple with the iOS app store fees, all that stuff. I'm not trying to defend big tech here. I'm just trying to say Meta buying Instagram and WhatsApp and then retroactively taking away those acquisitions because Meta is too powerful now is insane. Because the reason they're powerful is because of those acquisitions, but that's what we need to encourage, like companies being able to grow even if it's inorganically. And I mean, Ross Sorkin brought up a good point. Meta is the only company I know of that's realistically putting out an open source AI model with Llama that's actually like has the R&D to get better and better and better because Meta has so much money they can keep throwing at this. OpenAI still has not really released an open source model, and their name is OpenAI. So Meta, if anything, is actually outsourcing and making it more easier for people to get access to AI. They have tons of competitors. X is a competitor. TikTok is a competitor. Google obviously is a competitor. There's tons of new entrants in the space that are taking away market share. Obviously, Meta is still pretty dominant, but the idea that they need to be breaking up to me is crazy. I just don't agree with that at all. Did Facebook use its monopoly power to stifle innovation? I think TikTok taking a large share is evidence of that. No. How did Facebook stifle innovation? Facebook went up to Instagram in 2012 and said, hey, Facebook is primarily at the time, it was a photo sharing platform, right? You shared photos on Facebook. Instagram's getting all this growth because they have this like new way for teenagers to share photos. Zucks goes up to Kevin Systrom and is like, you want $1 billion? He didn't force him to take the $1 billion. Kevin Systrom had to make that decision and say, yeah, I think Facebook and Instagram working together would actually benefit both parties. And then in the context of stifling innovation, we have tons of social media apps that have started after Instagram. So to me, I don't get where the stifling innovation, and we have TikTok. That is a massive competitor. TikTok numbers just came out, actually. I have these saved. TikTok did an insane amount of revenue last year. And Facebook's not taking away any of their market share. So I disagree. I don't know how Facebook stifled innovation. If anything, Facebook encourages more innovation because now there's a massive platform that people can use to advertise every single day and gain more users. I don't see it. I don't see the story here. I think there's a better argument for Apple stifling innovation because Apple and Spotify, I always go back to that story. Spotify literally, I don't know if this is still the case, but to avoid the 30% fee, you can't buy Spotify Premium on your iPhone. They literally tell you, hey, go to Spotify's desktop app to purchase it. We know it's inconvenient. I remember when I bought it, they're like, we know it's inconvenient, but you need to go to the desktop app because they don't want to pay the 30% iOS fee. And that to me is more stifling of innovation than anything Facebook's doing. But I think getting mad at them for Instagram and WhatsApp doesn't make sense. So here's ByteDance. They did $155 billion in revenue in 2024. Isn't that basically what Facebook did? Meta revenue 2024. I think that's pretty much the same. Meta's revenue was $164 billion. You're telling me that no one can compete with Meta when ByteDance did $155 billion? They basically both did the same amount of revenue. And we want to break Facebook up? Like, I would understand if TikTok's doing like, I don't know, 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion of revenue. They're a pretty big competitor. And that's with Facebook being banned in China and TikTok being allowed in the United States. And ByteDance is still putting up these numbers. Like 29% up year over year. It's even growing faster than Meta. Meta's growing at like, I think 21%. Profit was 33 billion as well. Now Meta's doing more net income, but still. I don't see the argument, bro. I really don't. And I don't even own Meta. I have nothing to I don't have to shill Meta. I don't own Meta. So I have zero incentive to be biased for Meta getting away with this antitrust trial. I just think logically, this one doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's get another tariff update right here. Trump is not live, but we will switch to him as soon as he does go live.
Try to get an update, Megan, as to how things stand, at least this morning.
Right, so a handful of exemptions over the weekend mean that some products are escaping the worst of the tariffs for now. What we don't know yet is just how long this relief might last. So as of late Friday, a handful of consumer goods, mostly in the tech space, smartphones, computers, some TVs, these are no longer subject to the 125% so-called reciprocal tariffs on Chinese imports, but they are still subject to the 20% fentanyl tariffs imposed earlier in the term. Well, you were just alluding to, the White House spent yesterday and today downplaying the impact here. They've been denying that they were providing relief. And officials in doing this have two goals. They're pushing back on criticism that the president is softening his tariff regime, and they're highlighting that more tariffs, they say, are definitely coming. They say anything that isn't getting a so-called reciprocal tariff now may soon get a tariff for national security reasons instead. So remember, semiconductors, along with copper, lumber, pharmaceuticals, these were always exempt from the reciprocal tariffs because the White House has been promising that they're investigating these imports for national security threats. Now, that could lead to a separate set of tariffs under a different presidential authority, and one that is seen as having a more permanent impact. Now, smartphones and computers were not on that initial exclusion list, but a White House official just this morning telling me they could see tariffs as a result of the semiconductor investigation, given that those items, smartphone, computers, and others, contain semiconductors.
We got to deal with China and Vietnam. China and Vietnam sign memorandums of understanding, including on AI and agricultural trade. China's Xi Jinping is encouraging Chinese firms to invest in Vietnam. Huh. Interesting. China and Vietnam. I'm trying to see what the relationship here is. What China's Xi calls on China, Vietnam to jointly oppose unilateral bullying. We know that Vietnam's negotiating with the States right now. China's signing deals on agricultural trade and AI with Vietnam. What is China trying to get done right here? Because we know the U.S., Scott Bessent posted a photo of him and the Vietnam prime minister the other day. They're working together. I feel like there's an angle here with China. There is an angle here for why they're working together. Maybe they're trying to avoid the tariffs. Maybe they're trying to convince Vietnam to stay strong in the negotiation so that China has more leverage. But those are the updates we got right now from China and Vietnam.
So that probe could be broad enough, they're saying now, to include downstream users of the chips. That is not set in stone yet. The investigation also has not yet officially launched. So the tariffs aren't coming immediately on these items, but the upshot still is that the relief these companies are feeling today could prove to be somewhat short-lived. Guys?
Megan, obviously, over the weekend, we saw a bit of whiplash with regard to just the color coming out of the White House and then on the Sunday shows. Is that by design, or what have you heard in terms of just President Trump's economic advisors, and are they on the same page on all of this?
If you look closely at sort of the timeline here, these exclusions were issued late on a Friday, something like 11 p.m. The guidance came out from the Customs and Border Protection Agency, which imposes the duties. They weren't discussed really at length until Sunday by the administration. So we were seeing the rhetoric come out, and a lot of the thinking on Saturday was they're backing down, they're capitulating to China, they're recognizing that we are dependent on the Chinese market, at least for some of these items that they're now exempting. So a lot of the goal that I'm hearing from industry folks and others who have been in touch with them, this White House, is they're trying to push back on that. They're saying, we're not backing down. You guys are misunderstanding. We're just simply differentiating the type of tariffs at play here. But
it doesn't sound like that. The White House does not sound like they are oozing with leverage right here. I mean, they're admitting they can't afford to have iPhones and laptops tariffed at 150%. That's giving up some leverage there because China doesn't care. Right. But America obviously does, because people can't afford laptops and iPhones that are that expensive. So, yes, even though they're giving them a different bucket of tariffs, they are admitting we cannot have every product be violating the trade war rules, because it's obviously just going to increase more prices.
Everything is still going to get hit with a tariff. So they're wanting to sort of still look very strong. And I will emphasize that when they've been doing these country-specific tariffs, there's always been a note of that this is a bargaining chip. This is a way of bringing countries to the table. And as we've already seen the pause put in place, we may see a lot of those tariffs fall off. The product-specific tariffs are meant to be much more permanent, much more long-term. And so the administration, even though they might take a little bit longer to get to those, these are sort of the big ones still remaining. And whatever their ulterior motive is, they're also emphasizing we still have to get to that, and we're still planning on doing so.
All right.
Meantime, Megan, President Xi visiting Vietnam, some headlines coming out of state media there calling on Vietnam to jointly oppose what they call unilateral bullying. Still no indication that there's anything in motion to even set up a conversation between the president and President Xi?
That's right. President Trump and President Xi, the U.S. trade rep, was very clear yesterday. That conversation has not been had yet. They've not wanted to say the status of that, how the planning is going, but it seems like the White House is waiting for Beijing's call, and so far that hasn't happened. So no talks yet with China, but the administration does emphasize that a lot of other talks are still ongoing, including with Vietnam, at least at sort of the deputy level, not at the presidential level, but among aides. We also know the EU Trade Commissioner is in Washington today for meetings, expecting to potentially get some news on that later as well. So nothing with China, even as they say that they're advancing with something like, I think Peter Navarro said 90 countries in 90 days. We'll see. We'll have to see how those work out.
All right. So China in Vietnam today, I guess S&P is now getting a little bit more red, 1.6 to 1.2. Again, we're still green on the day. NVIDIA is still holding on to a little bit of green. Trump speaks pretty soon. Webull right here, still 50, 279% on the day. Based on what he says, it could obviously move the markets. Meta right here down about 1%. And Google 160. The other reason I'm not afraid about Meta is they have Dana White on the board now. So I think getting Dana White on the board is probably going to help them in pursuing Trump to drop the case and not make it as dramatic. And also, again, in the context of AI leadership, Meta, Google, you don't want any of these guys to get broken up if we want them to advance in AI. So there could be an argument there. But in the context of China and Vietnam, yeah, it does look like China is trying to pressure Vietnam to not be as friendly with the United States in negotiations. Because obviously if Vietnam gets a really good deal, I mean, a lot of Chinese supply chains and manufacturing also are in Vietnam, not the best for China. And if they get a good deal, China's not going to have as much leverage with the States. So seems like it's one of those core elements of how do they figure out how to make sure other countries don't get really good deals. Because eventually if Vietnam, Thailand get a good deal, China's going to have to capitulate something as well. I don't know a lot about the history between China and Vietnam. I'm sure it's a pretty complex history. I've never really studied it. But the fact that Xi Jinping is going there today and wants to get something done with them, he probably wants to persuade them to not be as friendly with the U.S. Has Klarna rescheduled his IPO? Yes, Klarna, StubHub, and a couple others have delayed the IPO. I still think they have a chance later this year, but as of now, it's currently delayed. Okay, let's see what else we have. That was the main headline right there. China and Vietnam. OpenAI is launching new models as early as this week. The information's reporting. They believe they can charge $20,000 per month for PhD level AI. All right, so we might see some more OpenAI headlines this week. We talked about the Trump-Russia stuff. We talked about NY Fed, inflation expectations. Yeah, those are pretty much the core things. Deutsche Bank now expects the Fed to deliver a 25 basis point interest rate cut in December versus prior forecasts of no cut. I still can't believe some of these firms are saying there's no cut. Like Deutsche Bank had no cut for the year. Bank of America still has no cut for the year. I feel like we're going to get more than a couple cuts, bro. It's so crazy that they're expecting no cut. By the way, I think the Salvador president is very close to entering the White House. That's weird to me, dude. Unless they really think the tariffs are going to expedite inflation to be that aggressive, I feel like we are going to get more cuts. I would be hoping to. Oh, yeah, Xi. So he's not only going to Vietnam, he's going to Malaysia and Cambodia as well. That's correct. That is correct. So it looks like he's trying to talk to these countries while the United States is talking to these countries as well, to try to make sure his deals maybe have a juicier offer than whatever the United States can offer. Are we tanking? Are we dipping? Oh, we're dipping. We're dipping. We're dipping. We need some chips because we're dipping. Oh boy, S&P falls below 1% on the day. There you go. I think that might be the El Salvador president. Yeah, we're still green for now. Nvidia's like 2 cents from going red, but we are still green. All right. Yeah, there we go.
Ready doors? Ready pop? Ready open? Ready close? Ready shut? Ready face?
President Trump, sir, President Trump, your message to Christians during this Holy Week, sir, the start of Holy Week. Do you have a message for Christians, sir, during this Holy Week, sir?
Okay. I don't know how long until they have their press conference. Might be like 10 minutes. But he wore a suit. Yeah, he wore a suit. He wore a suit. Dude, that was... it might just be random market jittering for why we're seeing a little bit of a sell-off here. I don't think there's any headlines. I mean, maybe the China-Vietnam stuff, market's like, okay, that means we're not going to get as good of a deal. China's trying to influence these other countries. That could be a syllogism to sell off stocks, but eventually I think we all got to believe these deals will inevitably come. S&P right there is still up 1%. Slightly green currently right now. He looks like David Blaine. Yeah, he kind of does look like David Blaine. You guys are right. Naive. Yeah, he kind of does look like David Blaine. He's going to push us to buy Bitcoin as a way to pay off our debt. There was a story on Friday of the United States potentially thinking, it's not confirmed, but potentially thinking of using some of their gold reserves to buy Bitcoin. I don't know, dude. I don't know if... I think the Bitcoin hype has kind of died down in the context of like the strategic crypto reserve, all that stuff. But if it comes back, who knows? Maybe we actually do use some of that money to buy Bitcoin. Okay, let me see. Naib, I think he's live streaming this on... Yeah, he is. Yeah, Naib on his Twitter. Oh, wow. Oh, here it is. Let me show you guys this. Okay.
Con el presidente Nayib Bukele, el presidente que, como todos sabemos, es...
Okay, it's kind of crappy right here. Let me see if I can get a better stream on this. But he's meeting with all the... Yeah, we don't have the stream. Okay, so this is the Spanish news, but we don't have it yet. Yeah, most likely in like 5-10 minutes, they're going to be doing their actual press conference. VIX is back up. That's correct. VIX is moving. VIX is up a little bit. Still down almost 10% of the day, but it is starting to move up a little bit. Webull 58. Dude, too many of you are excited about Webull. How many? Just admit it now. No one's going to judge you. How many of you bought into this? Because too many of you are excited about not making any money, which means you guys are probably making some money if you're this excited about Webull. Put in the chat if you actually bought this thing. Don't lie. We're not going to judge. I mean, some people might judge you, but still. Jerry, if Jerry's still here, let's see if he's out of it. See, like when it dumped from 53 to 47, if I'd held on to half, I would have sold it at 47. I'd been like, all right, I'm out. I'm not going to risk this thing dumping to 42 now. But it's right back to 57. There you go. Dude, a bunch of you are in this thing. Harris is in at 27, Patrice at 45, Fabio at 37, Josh at 27, Tanner Kanbir at 44. Bro, y'all are some real degens, bro. This thing pumped 3x and you still bought it at 44. Holy crap, bro. This is why liquidity in the public markets is beyond what the world has ever seen. I mean, this is why every company wants to go public, because there's someone out there that might buy the stock. And if you really start to get momentum, there's a lot of people that could buy the stock. And then you have institutions that could buy the stock. And it's just like you can make a lot of money in the capital markets over a long time. Liquidity just runs very deep. 17.9 million shares traded on the day. Wow. You can't buy puts on this. I think you can like technically short it. I've never actually like shorted a company, but you can't buy puts on this yet. Yeah, maybe people are selling Robinhood to buy Webull. I mean, all right, if that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. But Webull is now worth, in terms of percentage, 68% of Robinhood's market cap. And Webull did not grow 115% like Robinhood did last quarter. So I don't know. This could get messy. But could it keep pumping? Yeah, it could. It very well could. Webull's way better than NVIDIA. Yeah, dude. They got a massive outperformance from Webull versus NVIDIA. To be honest, everything's outperforming NVIDIA this year, which is hilarious. Isn't it hilarious? Like almost everything's outperforming NVIDIA. And it's freaking NVIDIA. I have a trailing stop loss at 50. Yeah, that's another way to play this, dude. If you're in early 20s, 30s, even 40s, put a stop loss at 50 or 52, whatever you want. So that if it does tank, at least you get some profits. And there's probably a lot of stop losses. So when it does fall, it could fall pretty aggressively. That's why we're buying NVIDIA. Yeah, I agree. I'm at 920 shares. I need to finish off those final 80 shares and get it over with to get the full 1,000. S&P still up 1%. NVIDIA is very close to going red. To be honest, dude, take NVIDIA back to 105 at this point. Let me finish out the position. Grabs at 406. Bitcoin's 84. Webull's about to hit 60. There's no way there's only 2 employees. I think some of the data on these websites are wrong. Like I think Webull has to have. I'm trying to find their S1. I couldn't find it the other day to try to get. Yeah, it says they have 1,100 employees on another website. Webull S1. Because they originally were a SPAC, so like some weird S1 is popping up, and it's not actually. Oh, is this it? Yeah, but this is from February 2024. And this is not even an S1. This is just a press release. Like, if anyone has the S1, can you please send it to me? Because I cannot find it. NVIDIA goes red. There she goes. S&P not red yet, but NVIDIA goes red. Oh, boy. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. New low of day for NVIDIA, correct. I think my average is 120. My like adjusted cost basis is, I think, 116-ish or 117-ish roundabout. Why are we falling? I don't have a good reason for why we're falling. Trump's about to speak. Maybe the market's a little scared of that. The NVIDIA headline was so bullish today, this whole American manufacturing stuff, especially because it's probably putting them on the good side of Trump when it comes to tariffs. But still, the market's selling it off, which is, it's one of those years where like this is just not, at least for now, this is not NVIDIA's year. This is an accumulation year. It's not a year where it continues to just ride higher like it did the past 2 years. Now it's trying to better normalize. NVIDIA right here, 110. Yeah, maybe a little bit of 1130 sell off instead of a 1030 sell off today. Covered calls at 119 by the end of the week. Maybe they hold up, maybe they don't. But as of now, not being uber bullish has not been the worst idea when it comes to NVIDIA. Let's get a couple more updates in terms of what's going on in the context of tech. And then we'll be waiting for when Trump goes live. And we'll see what he has to say. Here's an update on the Apple tariff stuff and why Apple's up currently right now.
Can think of. But those fentanyl tariffs on China that went into effect before the Liberation Day tariffs, that's 20%. Those are still in effect. And other analysts are looking at a potential slowdown in the macro environment as a downside here for Apple shares. But look, this gives Apple all the options it had before the Liberation Day tariffs happened to mitigate their impact. That means things like diverting production.
All right, Trump is live. Here we go. Trump is live. Trump is live.
Fantastic job, Mr. President. It's an honor to have you. You're doing
I'm going to try to get better audio in a second.
incredibly for your country, and we appreciate working with you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started.
And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turn.
Oh, the White House stream is not. Oh, no. It's
The
good.
journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, the White House stream sucks. Let me go to another one.
Very, very effective.
And we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, if sometimes they say that we imprison thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like,
it's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
Yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people. You have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, you know, free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change in the streets. A long way to go because you're just initiating your second term. But it's clear that, you know, with the numbers at the border, you know, when even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored, and eager to help.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had an administration that allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from all over the world, many from the Congo in Africa. And they came from gangs and the gangs of Venezuela and other places. And hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. 21 million people altogether, but many of the people that came, just a tremendous percentage of them were criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 11,088 known murderers. Half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out. We're getting him out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest
policeman.
change. Yeah.
Nobody's
From
ever
the
seen
lowest
it.
to the highest.
And the military now, Marines, the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot, we're straightening it out. We're getting them out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest
policeman.
change. Yeah.
Nobody's
From
ever
the
seen
lowest
it.
to the highest.
And the military now, Marines, the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot is, I mean, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now that we're having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police.
Yeah.
And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that we've ever had, the most enthusiasm. Great enthusiasm and on trade and other things. We're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made 2 weeks ago, I gave them a little bit of a pause because, you have to show a little flexibility. We go back to what we have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it, but we were losing $2 billion a day. There's no company big like this, but this is the biggest deal ever made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country, and I can say it. But what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you. Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
Okay. As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's a crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
It's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent, and we interviewed him just to get some information, etc., from them. And he said, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6 times, so I should be released again. And then we said, well, what's the last thing you do? And he said, well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg. And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times. And in the he was released 5 times. And the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, like you said, there's something broken.
It's the liberal establishment, but they're not running things anymore in this country. And we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything. We're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Because it's all common sense.
Yeah.
It's not liberal conservative, it's common sense.
Exactly.
Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a
violence
woman.
against women.
It's abuse of a woman. But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like you said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
They have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up and sways. She's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. They put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning, there was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good. That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women, so.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's why you're
And
running.
they're not DEI hires or anything. They're
They can
just
be-
great at what they do, right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
This
no.
is a first. We've had women, but we've never had 3 of them right here. That's
4 and 3
And
men.
look who we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? That's good. I like it. We've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard too. We have Pam, who's been so
Yes, I know.
fantastic.
Christy.
And the most powerful woman they say
I
anywhere in the
know,
world.
exactly.
She's rated. They're all afraid of Susie Wells. They say, oh, she's tough.
Yeah.
Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know? But I think she probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And you know, Stephen, who's done such a great job. We have great
He's
people.
very famous too.
But we love working with him. He really lets them have it. right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. Very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please?
President Trump.
Go ahead, let's not start
Mr.
with
President.
CNN because they're just so
Mr. President.
wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is, we had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel, but I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you would have never had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is.
Intolerable.
They're not from your country. They're not from mine. But I want to stop it. 2,500. It's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But just something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say they were the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of Three people. I would say three people. Let's say Putin, number one. But let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number two, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, and just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
In good relation with President Bukele, the best guarantee that this time you won't terminate the temporary protected status?
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look at this guy is, in fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I said, what kind of country is this? He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support extension for nationals of El Salvador under temporary protected status?
Do you plan to ask
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask
Supreme
for
Court's
anyone to get him
asking
back?
to.
Is that
What was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
in our favor.
In our favor, against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo liberaría, Presidente Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
You can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point.
Guys, I really don't know anything about this situation. I care about the markets. I care about tariffs. I thought we would get some tariffs questions. Obviously, they're going a different direction. So I really have nothing to say against this. I don't have an opinion here. I really have not researched any of this. I thought they were going to ask more stuff about tariffs. They're not. So we'll keep watching it to see whatever they talk about. But yeah, from this perspective, I'm like trying to understand what they're even talking about for the first time.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I noticed there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother. And it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and it came out perfecto. So that's good. It means you got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were going to be built?
I'd do something, we'd help them out, yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam, I don't know what the laws are, we always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States?
Oh, I do. I think everybody has to. The president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have to have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is going to be good. And, you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad. And you have to take them. If you're going to have a country, you're going to have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote, but I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country. I'm through the roof, right? 91%. Some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, you know, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. You know, I came back, we had no war in Ukraine. We had no October 7th, Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been, you know, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, got a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. You know, if you look at the numbers are incredible, actually.
Okay, they have not solved inflation, especially if tariffs are inflationary. That is not, it's good progress. But the reason the Fed's not cutting is because Jay Powell's afraid that tariffs are going to increase inflation.
Stock market's up. And
the stock market is up on Friday. It's down right now. It's definitely not up for the year. So, yeah, Trump claiming inflation's down, stock market's up. That is not necessarily true.
We're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you so much. You scored another major investment win this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer. The first time ever.
All right, finally, the NVIDIA question. Here we go.
Right here in the United States.
That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in is spending $300 billion, as you know. They announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs. As I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship. The press actually hit me and said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God. So I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And
NVIDIA is still down 1%, not really moving off these comments.
Thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people. They're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Thank you very much.
Are you considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack? And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce semiconductor
Well, I already
tariffs?
have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world, goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs?
No, not you. Not
Update today on potential semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
What?
Semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff is very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and the timeline?
I have a timeline, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion for some of these guys. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. It's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. We also had, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category last week. That was a nice game because we were getting a little hit because people didn't understand the power of our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years, we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate. And some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the president mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I actually think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because They just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll introduce you to some nice people. You'll see some very large people, right? You'll see some people that even you have not seen people like this. These are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good. Right? But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Okay. Who else?
Are those exemptions on electronics?
Yeah, you said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly. What do you mean by that? Is that a decision to strike Iran?
Or? The problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. That's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons.
Wow. Trump telling the Salvadoran president to his face, you cannot have a nuke.
We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel, the attack by Hamas, because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do it. I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
Just a follow-up question on a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money.
Yeah.
Because I shut off their oil and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do. But they have no money. Venezuela has no money. But Iran had no money. And Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from that harbor so quickly. China. Get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that? The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, on tariffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday, you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't.
There it is. There it is. You can tell Trump is not ready to necessarily tariff Apple as aggressively as it was last week.
Change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. Trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on?
But you know what? What?
Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. They're meeting like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America? Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that, and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, they were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table, and they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. They don't take, there are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Head out the door. Thank you, guys. Mr. President, do you have any comment on that?
All right, there you go. That's it for today. The big thing that I cared about was the tariff stuff, which we got near the end, right? We really didn't get in the beginning. They were talking a lot about illegal immigration, the border. What I cared about was the tariff stuff. So the quotes we got were, NVIDIA is a great American company. I want to thank Jensen. And he then ended off his NVIDIA statement with, NVIDIA would not have done this without tariffs. So that was kind of the core headline around NVIDIA after he got asked about it. He then said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. He also then said, I am looking into tariff pauses for the car companies to give them some more time, which is probably something that the car companies want to hear. We already knew they had a delay. That delay might get extended. I think there's a good chance it does because he knows the car companies at the end of the day can't survive until they get a lot of their parts imported before the tariffs come in. And then on Apple, he says, I like Tim Cook and Apple, and he used the word flexible. He said, I like to think I'm flexible when it comes to tariffs on their products. NVIDIA right here, 110.7, down about 0.7% of the day. Meta right here, down a full 2%. Looks like the overhang on the FTC trial is hurting them. S&P was red. Now it's recovering 0.5. NASDAQ did go red. Is it green yet, NASDAQ? Slightly green, basically flat, 0.09%. Palantir was up 7% today. Now it's up 4%. And then you have Webull that continues to pump 350% on the day. Apple, what's going on with Apple? Apple is green, but it is dumping from where it was in the beginning of the day. I thought his Apple comments were pretty bullish. He basically said, I'm flexible when it comes to Apple. He even said, I had a meeting with Tim Cook, and I like Tim Cook. So to me, I think Apple will inevitably have to pay some type of tariff on their products from China, but it won't be obviously 155%. But if it is 20%, that's still aggressive. It just might not have to be as aggressive as we thought it would be. So that's what we got from Trump. He's happy for NVIDIA. He thinks Jensen only did this because of the tariffs. He says he's looking to get some car companies more time with the tariffs, aka more of a pause to get everything they need. And then he thinks that Apple is a amazing company and he is flexible when it comes to their tariffs. We don't know exactly what that means, but that is, I would say, a little bit encouraging if you're an Apple investor to believe that Trump is willing to have a conversation. Which, I mean, that's classic Trump, right? He's always willing to talk and see what the other side has to say. I don't think he's going to actually put insane tariffs on Apple, Amazon, etc. Eventually we'll get a deal, but as of now, that is his stance. Now, we didn't get any answers on China. Some reporters tried asking him, but he didn't really give a response of just like, hey, what are the updates with China? He didn't say anything. He talked about Iran. He talked about Salvador. He talked about Vietnam to an extent. He talked about them for a little bit, but he never mentioned China. So I would imagine he doesn't want to talk about them yet because either they don't have any deals in place that they've started in terms of negotiations, or he just wants to be quiet until they can officially say that they've begun negotiations. There you go. That's what we got from Trump, and that is it for the day. Another 4-hour market open. I'll be back on the market close at 3:45. We do have one earnings after the day, Applied Digital. So we had Goldman Sachs in the morning. We have Applied Digital in the afternoon, APLD. Tomorrow's going to be a bigger day for earnings when it comes to the banks, IBKR, United Airlines, etc. And we'll see how Webull does throughout the end of the day as well. Right now, it looks like this sucker does not want to stop going up. I mean, if you're holding on, congrats. I would have sold probably like 10, 15 bucks ago. But if you're holding on, up 333% of the day. Just remember, Newsmax also did something like this, and then it crashed. So you just have to keep that in mind if you're currently in this name. Palantir right here, up 3.81% on the day after the Nato contract. NVIDIA dropping a little bit, Tesla as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we go red to end the day, but I think it would be a slight red, not an aggressive red. I also wouldn't be surprised if we slightly go green, but it looks like a flat-ish market today. Had some green momentum for the first 2 hours, and then I can't really explain why we tanked. I mean, I don't think Trump said anything crazy in that meeting that like caused the market to tank. I think it's just in general, people selling into the rip and potentially wanting to take some profits in the midst of this volatility. Palantir right here, 3.94% as we end out the open. All right, cool. Word of the day is Pylos. Okay, of course I said it wrong. Pylos. Covered with hair, especially soft hair. The Pylos caterpillar wriggled across the leaf. The most Pylos breeds of dogs tend to shed more. Covered with hair. Okay, cool. Pylos. I don't even know. I mean, I would say my arms are Pylos, I guess. Like, amidst Pylos. Dude, I've been Pylos since freaking middle school at this point, so. Yeah, I would definitely be Pylos. Real quick, one other headline. Marjorie Taylor Greene did buy Palantir. So she bought a ton of different things on April 8th. Now, April 9th was when we got the tariff relief in terms of the 90-day pause. So you never know. Maybe she had a little bit of a hint that we were going to get a pause the day after. But Palantir, Apple, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, Nike, AMD. So she bought $315,000 worth of these names: Palantir, Apple, Nvidia, Qualcomm, Nike, and AMD. It's some pretty popular stocks that she's been buying. I don't know if she's scrolling Twitter all day or something, but yeah, she's bought about $2 million worth of stocks year to date, and she did buy these stocks on April 8th. Now, granted, April 8th, the entire market was down. So if you're in the stock market, even if you didn't know what was going to happen on April 9th, you probably did buy a little bit, but those were the names that she bought. All right, cool. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back on the market close. We'll see how this market turns out towards the end of the day, and we'll keep going from there. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all. See you guys on the market close later today. Bye, everyone.